All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our board meeting, our only board meeting for December. It's December 9th. We are going to call the meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Dr. Thomas, if you would conduct roll call for us.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Here.
Miss Gallagher,
Here.
Miss Davis,
Here.
Dr. Yeager, Dr. Gant,
Here.
Dr. Maddox,
Here.
Dr. Dykeman, Dr. Anderson, and Attorney Hull.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum, and Dr. Anderson will be here, but she had a conflict. We will move forward with item 1.3, and this is our silent meditation and pledge of allegiance. If you would join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. If you would stand if you're able for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We'll move forward with our public comments. Just as a reminder, public comments are 3 minutes, and personal attacks will not be tolerated. If they occur, you will be asked to leave the podium. All right, so the only public comment sign up I have here is Christian Trotter. Oh, did I skip the awards? Uh-oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Let's back up. We'll go back to number 2. I apologize for that. Recognitions and awards. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, we have, I think, two categories of recognitions today, and they will be fairly short. Mr. Harris is going to lead those.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Good evening, everyone. I would like to first honor our Employee of the Month. So if you can, please join me in congratulating Miss Pamela Shear, a second grade teacher at Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary. I will read a quote from Dr. Singh, the principal of Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary. He writes, Ms. Shear is an outstanding educator who consistently demonstrates qualities that separate her from others. Her key characteristics are high expectations for herself and her students, her instructional expertise and professional judgment, and her care and commitment to our students and school community. She continually supports a strong classroom community directly related to her commitment to building positive relationships with her students. Her consistent expectations paired with her positive attitude create an environment where students receive the support and security they need to meet the demands of her rigorous instruction. The Oglethorpe Avenue Elementary community is so fortunate to have her on our team. One of the entry submissions actually came from one of our parents and guardians, and I will read that now. Ms. Shear even teaches us parents and guardians about the math the children are learning so that we can help them. I get a dojo notification early each morning about today's math lesson, which now acts as my morning alarm. Her motivation and ambition help me wake up, literally. She truly goes above and beyond. She is an excellent communicator, and I'm grateful both of my children have had the opportunity to be in her class. Please join me again in recognizing Ms. Shear as our Employee of the Month. Ms. Shear, similar to our other Employees of the Month, will receive close to $1,000 value worth of items donated on behalf of our local Athens Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at Mr. Harris because I thought we had something else according to Ms. Moore. We don't know. Just one. Okay. Well, there we go. That is it for our recognitions.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we will move forward to public comments. This is item 3.
If I may recommend turning the gain down on this mic, that might help if there's somebody controlling that with the ringing. I'll just go ahead. I had something prepared. I'm scrapping it. It's not worth anything. I'm just going to talk from the heart. First, thank you all for being here. I know that you have a thankless job and you just have to sit here and listen to people like me complain about stuff a lot. So I appreciate y'all being here and listening. I would like to talk about what's been going on at Clark Middle lately, which I know most of y'all understand. I would assume what's going on. I think the mic just got cut, but we'll keep going. And I'm mainly talking to the parents out there who know kind of what I'm going through. I got 2 boys at Clark Middle, and over the last several years, I've watched the school kind of decline further and further when it comes to incidents of behavior and specifically violence. And even this year, we started out with vandalism, and now it's become, more violence, and stuff just continues to happen. On November 13th, we got a message from the principal talking about how proud he was that there hadn't been any fights in 2 weeks. And then 2 days later, we got a message saying that there had been multiple disturbances at the school, and they had to go into an administrative lockdown. That was all it said, just multiple disturbances. And it wasn't until the kids got home and they said, yeah, there were so many fights, they had to lock down the school, which that wasn't at all clear from the communication that we had gotten. Previous communications had always been very clear about what was going on. If an incident had happened, it was, here's what we're doing about it, here's what's happening, and we've taken care of it, everything is good. Nothing like that happened this time. Then 2 days later, there was what I would call an aggravated battery that was caught on video. And what happened was a student attacked another student with a water bottle filled with rocks, hit him over the head at least 8 times with the bottle. It was caught on video, and my son was sent a copy of that video, and he showed it to me. It was so shocking and disturbing, the violence and the malice in the attack, that's when I decided I had to do something. I had to come here. I wrote all of you. I'm sure you read it. And I decided I had to be here tonight and say something about it. The most disturbing part was that the student who did the attacking was back in school the next day. The following Monday, he was not. I don't know if it was a suspension or what happened. Obviously, I'm not privy to that information, but he was back in school on Tuesday. One of my kids was very disturbed by that this could happen. The video that he saw, what we would have called attempted murder, the student could be back in school after 1 day being out. A few days after that, 2 kids had sex at Clark Middle, and it was recorded on video, and that video was again distributed widely to different schools, lots of different students. And fortunately, my sons did not get a hold of that video, but we didn't get anything from the school for 3 days. For 3 days, kids had access to that video, that information. Parents had no knowledge of it unless their students told them what had happened. Control seems to have been lost at Clark Middle. Communication is gone. And I'm just asking for someone to do something, especially if it's just communicate with us and tell us what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Palmer, just confirming that's the only speaker. All right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trotter. We'll move forward with item 4.1, which is to amend and or adopt the agenda. The floor is open.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dr. Maddox, a second by Ms. Hall. Any questions, further discussion about the agenda? All right, all in favor of adopting the agenda is listed here. If you would say aye and raise your hands. Aye. Any opposed, the same sign. And any abstaining? Okay, that motion carries, and so our agenda is before us. We'll move forward to item 5. These are our presentations and discussions. 5.1, the assembly presentation, and then 5.2. So Dr. Thomas, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gant. We have a presentation, as you've just said. The first will be on assembly, and that was organized by Ms. Palmer. So I'll let her introduce our speaker. And then after that, we have our monthly strategic priority overview and update by Dr. Harris.
So this is Miss Nancy McGinnis from Assembly, and she's going to show you all the features and how to use Assembly. I'll turn it over to her.
Lisa could show you, she's just too modest. She's been doing a great job with this. So let me switch over here to, I see it, okay, yeah. Thanks. Just get my mouse to move here. Oops, I went to the wrong place. Give me just 1 second to get to your side. And I know, sorry, let me move this a little bit. I know that you've been on Assembly because you've been doing a couple of evaluations on Assembly. So I'm going to try not to go over stuff that I think you already know. But let me get to the right place here. Oops. My goodness, this is the tiniest keyboard. Okay, that gets us to the right place. So this is the homepage of your Clark County Schools Assembly site. And as I said, I know that you've been here before as board members because you've logged in and worked on those evaluations. So I am going to just tell you a few things about it before I log in. And when I do log in, I'm logging in with the same credentials that all of you have as board members. So what I'm showing you is what you should see when you go and log into the site. But before I log in, a couple things that I wanted to mention. You all have subscribed to 6 different Assembly modules. That's meetings, policies, planning, evaluations, communications, and documents. And from the public view of your site right now, you're not seeing all of those selections here in the menu bar. And that's because there's not already publicly available information in all of those modules. So as soon as there's publicly available information there, then they would show up as well for the public to be able to get to your meetings and your policies and so forth. And one other thing I want to mention as I'm logging in is if it's been a while since you logged into Assembly and you have any trouble with remembering your user ID or password, please click on Forgot Password. Put in the email address in the site, which is your Clark email address, and it'll send you a reset password that will show you your user ID and let you set a new password. What I don't want to happen to you is if you put the wrong thing in 3 times, you'll be locked out of the system for 30 minutes. And if it's 2 minutes before the board meeting, that might be a problem. Okay, so now that I'm logged in, you see that I have more options up here in the menu bar, and you are seeing all of the modules except for the evaluations module. And that's because even though I've set my credentials the same as all of you board members, I did not give myself permission to see any of the evaluations you've already done. That wouldn't have been appropriate. But when you log in, then you should see evaluations in this listing as well to be able to go to that module. So a couple things to mention here. The question mark, once you log in, you have this question mark, which is our help. At the top of this pop-up is all of the I need help now options. You can submit a ticket to us, you can live chat with us, call one of the support lines, or email us. And the members of the training and support team all monitor this. So anyone who answers the call or the chat or the email is going to be someone who can help you with whatever issue or question that you have. And then the bottom of this pop-up is more, sorry, this keeps going down. The bottom of the pop-up is more of the self-serve help. It'll take you over to our help desk. So if you just want to, look around and see if you can find the answer to your question, there's a lot of great information on the help desk. And the video-based training, there's a number of different trainings on there, and we update those all the time. So that's just a resource for you. All right, so let's go to the meetings module so we can look at how you're going to start to access your board meetings. Thank you for your help. All right, so to get to meetings, you would just, you can either click on meetings here or drop down and click on meeting listing. And it's a short list right now, but it's going to start growing. But what you'll see on this page is a list of all of your meetings that are available for you to view. And as they do start to build up, the most recent one will be at the top of the list. And then as you scroll down, they'll get older. So as I said, those are going to start to build in the system. To get to the meeting agenda, you would click on the title here. And the first place it takes you is to basically an agenda outline. So this is going to be a listing of all of the items that are on the agenda. Got a long agenda tonight. But the more interesting view here is to click on any of the items, and it takes you to the secondary view. It's an item view. So on this page, you've got your agenda still over on the left-hand side, and you can scroll down and see all of the agenda. But as I start to move through the items, you'll see content appear on the right. So all of that information that's provided for you on the different agenda items will be listed over here on the right side. You can navigate through the agenda using these arrow buttons. So I can go forward to the next item, or I can use the one to go back, or you can just click down on any item that you want to see. So coming down to your voting item that we just went through, the amend or adopt agenda. For voting items, you're going to see a recommended action. That's what is recommended that you're voting on, and then any other information would be listed here as well. Here's my cheat sheet. And I'm just going to click down through some different items to point out some things for you. So on this item, you'll see at the top of the content is the tie over to the goals. So within Assembly, you can create these ties between the different modules. So over in the strategic planning module, the strategic priorities have been entered, and then we can tie the meeting items over to the correct strategic priority. And as the planning module the strategic plan, as more detail gets input into the system, then you could tie over not only to that high-level strategic priority, but you could drop down and actually tie a meeting item to an initiative or to an action step. The supporting documents are very important for board meetings. So for the most part, you're going to see PDF files attached to your meeting items. And with the PDF, you can simply click to open the PDF and view the content of the PDF. There's a number of pages on this one. And then when you're finished with that, you just close that browser window and it brings you right back to your agenda.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is live now?
It is?
Okay, so I didn't find it then. Okay, I'll catch up.
Okay. It's on the Assembly site, the same place that you would have logged in to do those evaluations.
Yeah, that'll be a minute.
We can make sure that you can get there and get logged in.
Okay.
No, so we can put a link on the district website over to the board meetings. So as soon as the hard switch is made to Assembly, then the link on the district site would direct them to the Assembly site. And of course, they wouldn't log in. They would just see it from the public view. And policies too. Yeah, when they're ready. All right, so I'm going to skip down to one of the policy items. And I know you've got a lot of detail on these policy items. You can see the recommended action, And the objective, this one apparently is to rescind this policy. And then your detailed, the actual content of the policy is listed here on the right. And when you do have content that is beyond the screen, the size of the screen, then you'll see a scroll bar over on the right-hand side. So you can continue to scroll down and see all of the content on that item. This next one, this is another policy item, and I just wanted to give you a preview of something that will be available once all the policies are loaded on the site. So this is a policy that's recommended to be revised, and we're showing the content of the policy with those additions. But down here at the bottom, I've actually attached that same draft policy from the policy manual. So that's another one of those links between the modules in Assembly that whoever's creating this item or creating the meeting can reach over into the policies module and get that draft or an adopted, any document will work, and attach it to the meeting item. And just so you can see what that looks like, this is a draft in Assembly, and the green is showing you the proposed, I'm going to mess that up, the proposed changes on the policy. So that's something that will be available pretty soon.
So the green transferred over from the highlighted version?
Right. So we have within our policies module a feature of track changes, and the track changes actually, the green would be the standard for ours. Is the new additions would be in green, and then deletions would be red and struck through. So this next item is a personnel item. And one of the things that you can do in Assembly is that you can load content onto the board meeting for the board members' eyes that is not available to others who shouldn't see it. So the supporting document on this item, if you can see it, it's got a little lock symbol next to it. And that means that that document has been placed in confidential view. So you can see it on the screen because I'm logged in as a board member who can see that. But if I were looking at this meeting from the public standpoint, they would see the title of the item and the goals, but they would not see that document at all. So that's an advantage. There's no need to provide that on paper to you separately. It can be on the site, but it's still locked down so that only the right people are seeing it. And I wouldn't click on that because I don't need it to be shown to anybody. So I did want to get to one of these items that has a great deal of content. I believe this is one of your action items. And I think we've tried to format it in a way that is familiar to you, with the objective and the background and the highlights showing all of this content here. So coming down. So one thing I wanted to show you about the agenda too, from this page, if you've got a lot of content and you want to adjust the size of the page, you can use this little bar in between and shift it over, and it'll make that agenda a little bit smaller and give you more room to read the content. And if you want to close the agenda entirely, you can use this double arrow here to close it. And then you've got all the content. You could leave it closed and use your arrow buttons to move from item to item, but then you can also just open it back up.
So did you say increase fonts this way or just give me more space?
I'm sorry, it doesn't increase the font size, it just gives more space. Now this is, I know this is real small here, but I believe if you're looking at it on your, is it small for you on your computer as well, or?
I got away from my password.
You're not there, okay. I think this is the browser is kind of
Yeah, okay.
kind of small on this one, or the resolution is a little bit small.
Okay.
But once you log in, you'll be able to see these items. So
You can do control plus and control minus too. if it's
yes, you
Windows-based.
can.
I do that
You
for
can.
some of
When I was looking at the meeting earlier on my computer, and I think my resolution is at 125%, it was pretty good for me, and I have vision problems, so I think you'll be okay with the size of the font that's actually there. So you may notice on a number of the items, there are little icons next to the item on the agenda. The paperclip indicates that there's a supporting document, or excuse me, an attachment of some type on that item. So it could be a supporting document, it may be a policy that's been attached, or meeting minutes that have been attached, but that just lets you know that there's a supporting document there. So coming back up, I did want to point out to you this item on your agenda for assembly, and I've provided some information for your reference, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But if you can see the little lock symbol here next to the information field, and when I scroll down, you're also going to see it on the supporting documents field. So that confidential visibility can be applied to an entire item, or it can be applied to any of these fields, or as we saw on the personnel item, it could be applied to an individual document. And the reason that I've made this part confidential is it's just really for you. But what I've put here is there's a video, and you can play it directly from the meeting here, about the board member experience with meetings. It goes through some of the things that I'm talking about tonight. It also shows you how you can look at meetings on your phone if you're so inclined, or need to look at the meeting on your phone. It'll show you how to do that. And then the second video is on online voting. We do have an online voting feature where if you're logged in, you can submit your vote on a voting item. It's not something that I can easily demonstrate here because there's back and forth, but I wanted to provide the video to you so that you can take a look at that, see if it's anything of interest, and we'll go from there. And then that supporting document is a PDF, and it includes some instructions and information for all of the different modules. So we're not going to get real deep into the other modules tonight, but this is just here for you as a resource. And another feature that I wanted to tell you about is our sticky note feature. Just see if I can type here. So up in the upper right above that arrow is a little button that looks like a yellow sticky note, and that's exactly what it is. And what you can do with that, if you're sitting on an item and you click the button, it opens up the sticky note, and you can make a note to yourself. So if I type in a note here, whatever it is, I need to remember to ask a question or make a comment or something, then I can write a note, and this is only for my eyes. So the sticky notes are user specific. If I create a sticky note, none of you are going to see it. And if any of you create sticky notes while you're logged in, nobody else is going to see yours. So it's strictly a note to yourself. You can take the sticky note and move it up kind of out of the way and leave it open, and just work your way down through the agenda, making notes on any items that you would like to. I think I messed up by not saving that. Hang on one sec. I won't type a lot, but when you put your content in there and then you save it, it puts a little sticky note next to that item. I don't know if you can see that on that number 2 there. So I could keep this open, go through the agenda, making all of my notes. If you want to delete the sticky note, you would just erase the content and save again, and then that deletes it and removes the icon. But I'm going to leave this one there. You have a couple of print options, and that's here under the print button. One of them is to print the agenda outline, and it gives you a couple of different options. You can print it with the quick summary field, which may be used to add, some information about the item. It won't have all of the details. You could include the recommendations, and you can include your sticky notes. So if you wanted to make those selections and then generate the print version, hopefully it's going to pop up. And so here I've got, this would be my agenda that I can print. It's got the recommendations because I asked for that. And then your sticky notes are very bright and easy to see So you could actually print that out. That was pretty much everything I was going to tell you about the meetings module. Are there any questions about that? Other than we got to get logged in. Okay. So up at the top, excuse me, let me get back up here. You've got a home button up here in that same bar where you logged in. So the home button will always take you back to the home page. And I'm just going to quickly show you what's in the planning module. More to come soon. So what we've built there is just the high-level strategic priorities. And these different modules kind of work similarly. If I was on a listing, I clicked on the title to come to the plan. I would click on an item to get more detail. And so I believe after the first of the year, I'll be working with the staff to get more of the details of this strategic plan loaded into Assembly and really show the whole thing. The policies module is similar. It's a little bare right now, but we're going to get started loading those policies in. But this would be the policy listing page. You'll have your sections over here on the left-hand side. So once the whole list of policies is in here, if you wanted to just focus in on a section, you can click on it, and then you'll only see the policies that are within that section. To go to the actual policy or document, you click on the title. And so here is your policy. At the top is the code in the title, and then the dates that are associated with that policy, and then your content. And then at the very bottom, I believe now all of your state and federal references are actually in the body of the policies. But part of what GSBA does for you is we maintain all of those references and the actual links for those references. So they're pulled out and they're listed below, and they are clickable links. So, and then if anything changes, if another code or regulation gets added to this policy, then GSBA will do that automatically for you. So there's no work there. One thing I'll tell you, just to avoid a call or a moment of frustration, is that the site that we access for the different links, the reference links, does require us, when you're in the browser, to click on this terms and conditions statement. And it's just one time per browser session. It would take you to this page where you just say, I agree. And as soon as you've done that, you can go back and click on any of these links, and it'll take you directly to that correct reference for that.
I'm glad the links are connected. That's important.
And let me come back up, up to the top here. So while I'm sitting on this policy, I wanted to show you one of the features that's available for the public and also, for anybody really on the site. And that's here in the login bar too, and it's a Google Translate feature. So if you've got, I'm sure you have multiple languages spoken in this area, a parent that maybe doesn't speak English so well, they can come to the Google Translate button and they can translate the entire site into whatever language they pick. So I'm sitting on this policy and it's now in Spanish. And if I were to go back to the meeting agenda, you would see that also in Spanish. And it stays that way until I go back and switch back to English. One caveat I think that's written up here now in Spanish is that, we are relying on Google Translate for this translation. So it is just as good as Google Translate is. Okay, just a couple more things. Here under the More area, and then if you come down to GSBA, this is where you have access to e-law and e-boardsmanship, and this is a service that we provide to our subscribers, and you do have to be logged in to see these. But the e-law part of the site is an area that's maintained by the attorneys that support us, Harbin, Hartley, and Hawkins, I believe is the right name. But it is basically a question and answer type document. Find yourself at 2 in the morning, you're still clicking on references. if you're not asleep. And then the other one, the e-boardsmanship, this is basically a primer for board members, but there's a lot of good information. When I first came to work for eBoard Solutions, which is part of GSBA, Georgia School Boards Association, this was one of the things that they asked me to read and learn and understand for board members. So I don't think any of you are brand new board members. I believe it's used in the new board member orientation, but there is a lot of great information here about governance. And then the last thing I wanted to show you was the search feature, which is a really powerful feature of the site. So you can do simple searches or more advanced searches, but let me just show you a simple search to start with. So you would just put in your keyword, and I'm going to put in literacy. You can pick a date range. Right now, there's nothing older than 2 years on your site. And then you can search in any of the modules. So I'm going to search in meetings. And when I get the results list, it's going to tell me the meeting, because we only have one in here, and the actual items that have the word literacy in them. So if you were looking for something in particular, oh, I think that's the right item, you can click to go to that item. And anywhere that it found the keyword, the word literacy, is going to be highlighted. So it's highlighted here because it's in the title. But as I scroll down, I'm going to start to see everywhere that it found the word literacy, even down to the supporting document. So somewhere inside this PDF, it found the word literacy. And as long as these PDFs are actual PDFs and not scanned PDFs, it can search down inside and find the words for you. Oops, sorry. So let me show you another one. So I'm going to search for the word discrimination, and I'm going to search in meetings and in policies. All right. So for my meeting search result, it's down on this policy item, and if I click to go there, you would see the word highlighted there. And then to see the policy results, I'll just click over to the other tab, and here's my policy. And it does the same thing. It highlights that keyword for you. And then it gets even better. So you can do an advanced search. And I'm not going to actually run one for meetings because I'm afraid it might sit here and churn for a while. But same thing, you would put your keyword in here and then click on meetings. And you can search your meetings, but you can also search any other or all Assembly sites in the state of Georgia. And we have, I believe, like 168 of the 180 districts in Georgia are on Assembly. So this is a pretty powerful tool to be able, if there's a hot topic and you want to see how other schools are dealing with it, then you could use a search to find that. So if I click other sites, then I could select all, I could select a particular one, or I could go by student population and maybe pick districts of a similar size to yours. And like I said, I don't want to run that one because I'm afraid it would take a bit. But you can also search in policies. You can do the keyword search in policies. You can select other Assembly sites, and then you could actually search on a policy code. So you can do the keyword search, but you could also search on a code. I'll just pick one. And I've selected all, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully it won't take long. So that didn't take very long. So I guess I still had meetings checked, I'm sorry. So it did find some meetings referencing that code, and then no policies, sorry. I picked a bad one. But if you did have results under policies, then you could go and look at that that policy on that other district site. And anytime you go to another district site, you're only seeing their publicly available information. Your login won't work over there. So there's nothing wrong with searching or clicking and going to these other sites to take a look.
So we can do that now from a public access, right?
I'm sorry?
If you're looking at a public, a policy and you're just on the Assembly website in general without logging in, can the public just go out and look across other sites?
Yes, they can.
I thought so.
They can. Yep. Let me go back to the homepage. So I'm gonna log out here. So now I'm back to being a member of the public, looking at your site. They can do the search as well. So they could do that same search. And then also under this other Assembly sites is a listing of all of those other sites that are on here. So anybody who has access to Assembly site can open this and select a different site and go see just their publicly available information. So that was really all that I wanted to cover with you all tonight. Are there any other questions that I could answer? Yes, ma'am.
So back when we were doing the meetings and you were showing us the specific agenda items,
Mhm.
are we able to record our votes there? And is it interactive during our meeting that we can participate?
So that's the online voting feature that I have put that video on the item for you to see.
Okay.
Yes, if you decide to do that, you can. As I said, to actually do the electronic voting, you do have to be logged in. Just to tell you kind of how it works, it requires a little bit of work on Lisa's part, because as you get to a voting item, she would click Open Online Voting, and then you would have something pop up on your screen. And it would be that item would pop up, it would have all of its content on it, and the bottom would be your voting choices, and you select your choice and submit your vote. And just to let you know that you don't have to have 100% participation in the online vote. If there's anyone who's, maybe they had to join by phone or Zoom or something and they're not logged in, Lisa can still record their vote manually herself. So she could see, if she knows that a particular person is not going to vote online, then she could record their vote for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, but please take a look at the video because it goes through the whole process.
Great. We're gonna get a separate link to that video, aren't we?
Yes, I'll send it to Lisa. I'll
That
make
would
sure.
make it so much easier.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions that I could answer? No? All right. Well, thank you so much. We are so excited to have Clark County as one of our newest customers and glad to help you or work with you at any time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I promised I was going to bed by 3. Now it's going to be another month. Okay.
All righty. Well, good evening, everyone. Again, I'm here to present on strategic priority, our goal 2, which is to engage families, community members, and civic organizations as active partners. So I'm going to go through our PowerPoint slide here fairly expeditiously, but with enough detail to provide information for my colleagues back here in the back, my friends. So we are talking today about goal number 2, objective 2, which is to create and coordinate an effective communications process. Within that objective, we do have 2 initiatives. Our first initiative is to develop and execute a communications plan that increases our community's understanding of the district's needs, goals, and priorities through consistent and meaningful communication. And our second initiative is to launch a district news and information platform that engages students, families, and the surrounding community. So when we look at initiative 1, which is around our communication plan, the what is that our communication plan really develops and really details how we're going to communicate important information that's timely and relevant to our community and to our stakeholders, including parents, students, staff, and faculty. So our communications plan really outlines the how and the who we communicate with to ensure we're reaching multiple mediums based off how our community would like to receive communications and how they best understand the information that we are providing. The reason we have a plan is because it allows us to communicate strategically, which results in more equitable and effective communications. A good example would be 2 years ago, we did a brief survey of our students, asking parents, asking how they preferred to receive news and information. And we did notice that many of our families and students mentioned social media, from Facebook to Instagram. But when you break that down from students to parents, you start to see this kind of deviation based off of who's responding, which social media platforms they use. To no surprise, many of our students are not on Facebook or using Facebook actively, but they are on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And so receiving news in that way would be a way that we want to make sure our students receive information, but maybe Facebook, email, as well as website may be that avenue and venue for parents. So our plan will really outline strategically how we communicate. Within this initiative, we'll measure multiple things, one of which would be positive press releases. If we are communicating better through our plan, we would expect to see more positive press in our local media news outlets, because we'll be sharing information proactively with our local news outlets, not just our newspapers, but our local radio stations and local television stations, which we have basically none, but we're gonna get there in a moment. We also would see an increase in our social media engagement. I will say over the past really 14 months, I've been sharing the data with Dr. Thomas. Our social media engagement in regards to our Spanish-speaking families has increased well over 200%. Those pages have several hundred families now actively engaged in information and material around the school district. And I think it's because we have our translation interpretation team actively ensuring that they're posting on those pages. They go out into the neighborhoods, they show parents and families how to sign up for that Facebook page. And so we want to make sure we duplicate that as well in our other social media sites. But all of our social media engagement should go up. Engagement meaning likes, meaning shares, meaning comments, hopefully positive. So that way we know we're sharing the information our families want to see. We can also see social media engagement in our newsletter. We do use Smore and Smore as our newsletter platform, so we can see what links our families and our community members actually click on, so we can see what material do they find relevant and interesting. And so if we're sharing information and it gets 0 clicks or minimal clicks, that may be something that our community is saying they're not quite interested in. But if we notice content around certain things are getting more likes and more clicks and shares, we'll know that's what we want to be sharing information actively around. And then our last measurement will be satisfaction with our communications as measured by surveys. We are actually in the process of finalizing the details. I'm very excited around our comprehensive communication survey. So we're calling it, it's a long name. But basically, we are going to release 3 separate surveys, one for our community, one for our staff, and then one for our parents and students to really gauge how do they engage with the communications that we distribute to them. And so we want to know what's your preferred method of communication, what's your preferred time that you receive communication, how do you feel we're currently doing now, what grade would you give us essentially, and how can we improve? So that survey will go out early in the new year. We're excited to get that data back so that way we can pivot and make sure we're providing timely, relevant information to our community. So where are we now? The draft plan is being finalized. We have, of course, we don't want to finalize the plan without the data. We do have the skeleton. So the skeleton is basically breaking it down to goals and strategies. We did have a strategic communications audit in 2018. That data, as you can imagine, is a little outdated. We've had a few things happen since 2018 that may affect communications and how people receive information. So we do have the skeleton being finalized, but then we need to insert the data and the strategies that are current and relevant to 2021 to 2022. So the results, again, increased positive interactions with our school district and community. Hopefully we hear less that we don't communicate well, and people start saying you all communicate so much, we know everything that's going on within the school system. We'll have more informed parents, students, staff, and our community. And this just gives you our next steps of where we're going. We'll be executing our comprehensive communications audit, most likely around February. And then from there, we would finalize the strategic actions and goals in the communications plan and then publish the plan for our public to see, but also so that way we have some public accountability as far as the things that we have committed ourselves to do as a school district. So by early summer, we should have a plan in action, and we will be able to measure our progress within that communications plan. And then we have initiative 2, which is a very exciting initiative. It's something we've been working on for a little over a year now, which is to create a local district broadcast news station managed by the district and staff with CCSD students to share timely information with district stakeholders and provide hands-on learning for students. Why? Video has become one of the most popular mediums by which individuals receive information. YouTube continuously outpaces all other social media platforms in regards to sharing information within communities and around the world. We also do not have a local news broadcast station here, through video here in Athens. And so we have the opportunity to partner with some of our local radio stations, with some of our other local news stations to make sure we're providing timely and relevant material. We'll be measuring our success by the number of viewers. Of course, we want that viewership to go up. The students' experience. Are they feeling like they're learning something? Are we seeing our students engaging in critical thinking, public communication skills, confidence? Are they able to write? Because they will be, responsible for writing the stories that they present on, but also just the measurement of their experience overall as they go out and build their social capital, as they mix and mingle with different adults in the community to find their stories. And of course, we'll measure the number of stories and features we produce. Where are we now? We do have a location selected at our new administrative offices off Prince Avenue. It's currently a blank slate, but we're looking forward to building out that space in collaboration with our high school journalism teachers, as well as some of the staff at the Grady College of Journalism, to really build out a very nice broadcast studio where we can film the show and produce it, as well as we see that space as being a space that will be able to do superintendent's address with Dr. Thomas, being able to speak to our community. So it will be a nice studio on the floor in the wing where my team is located. We are in the process of hiring a digital communications specialist. This individual will be in charge of managing what we're affectionately right now calling CCSD TV. So they will manage the show, manage the students, work in collaboration with Mr. Molina, the workforce development coordinator, and our CTAE teachers. We do have a draft script. Last year, when Mr. Harold Faison was in the position, we did go ahead and survey some students to better understand what they wanted to see in a show. So they talked about things such as culture corner and superintendent space. And so they want sports and athletics. They want to hear about what's happening in their community with Athens Clarke County government. And so we do have a draft script of some of the segments that students said they would find interesting. So of course we want to tease that out as students are brought on as interns. We do have a recruitment strategy developed for a pilot summer cohort. We want to keep our kids engaged this summer. So we should be ready to bring students online this summer. And we feel summertime's a great time for students to engage in CCSD TV to really start to build the foundation. They can cover things such as summer school, summer programs, things happening in the community as far as sports, athletics, nonprofit events. So we do have that recruitment strategy developed with our high school staff. And then we do have some of our equipment ordered. So we are on track for CCSD TV. I'm really excited for us to eventually get it off the ground. It's been some time coming. So the results of our implementation, not many results because it hasn't happened yet. So there's nothing here for you to see quite yet. But when I report out, hopefully next year, we'll have some positive results to show. But where we're going, we'll start building the studio right around February of 2022. We'll create the plan of action in place right around March to April. Make sure the scripting is solid. We'll start to reach out to our community partners at some of our local news and radio stations to talk about how can we collaborate on our shows. And then we will onboard our high school interns right around May at the end of the school year. So that way they'll be prepared to start capturing stories, features and stories come summertime. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I got one.
Yes, please go for it.
So at some point, is this going to be a pathway for students?
So we're currently partnering with the film broadcast news film program Mr. Bosby teaches here at the Career Academy in the high schools, and then the 2 high school journalism programs. So I do not know if the goal is to make it a broadcast news pathway, but right now we're just using the resources we currently have. But I don't know, maybe a pathway. Ms. Davis and Mr.
So the
Davis.
outcome of this is going to be,
That our students, staff, and family, our students and families and community are more informed about what's happening within the school district as well as within their community. So it's a sharing of information using another medium.
and it's going to impact our climate school climate.
It should
scores?
impact climate scores. It should impact, so as part of our climate and culture scores does talk about how informed parents feel and how involved they feel within the school system as well as students. So it should impact those scores, which right now are right in the low 70s. So we should see those numbers rise because parents and students should then say they feel more informed and more engaged about what's happening in their school because they're receiving information about what's happening.
So the TV was the second initiative, but you're doing more with other social media.
Oh, yeah.
platforms.
So, right. So the first part would be the plan. So the plan really, the communications plan is truly the foundation of what we're doing. CCSD TV is really kind of lives outside, it's within and outside of the plan. So we are doing things, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you all notice, we now post every day. Our goal is to have a post out every day, even if it's just highlighting something from a school, something that's happening within our school system, an update. So we are doing that. So we're regularly doing that and measuring that impact. But the CCSD TV is just a value add. We also recognize that we're not reaching students the same way through our Facebook posts, through email. And so by having CCSD TV where they see their peers, we want to continue to engage our students in what's going on in their school system. So we should hopefully see their engagement go up.
Really
I'm
like the
excited.
collaboration, so
I'm sorry. I'm excited about that.
Thank you. It should be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a cold evening. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this, Lawrence. Have we reached out to the journalism school at UGA?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've reached out to Dean Davis. So we're in the process of looking at some master's level students in the broadcast journalism program, helping our students kind of walking them through how do you craft a high quality news story. They're also going to help in building the studio because I've never built a studio before.
No.
And so that is something they do at UGA through the New Media Institute. And so they're going to be a great partner. in
And that
getting us off the
studio
ground.
would be used for both broadcast and video
Mhm.
station.
So yeah, broadcast would be the video.
Right.
Mhm. And then also for any times that we have any state of the district addresses that Dr. Thomas can then do. So our goal would be having just a standard space that we can always do our videos from. And so that way we have a medium where we can produce information. So if there's timely information that has to get out, superintendent can come to the studio, record whatever video needs to go out, and we can push it out to our community. So it's another medium. We also recognize that a lot of things we do are in writing, but we recognize that sometimes our literacy rates are, for some people, the way we write may not reach every population. And so video and audio is also another way to communicate. So we don't want to always depend on written communications when some people process information when they can see you say it or they can hear you say the information. So
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, Lawrence, about how to, because I mean, it's almost like, I mean, I'm looking at it from the educational perspective for the students, but also this is an important communication tool of the district. And I'm just wondering how those two are going to be blended together so that students can be integral to the production of this. And so I'm at the same time, this is something that the district needs to communicate to the parents and the community. And so it's more than simply a classroom. So I'm trying to figure out how will the students be integrated into this process without slowing down the process. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure.
When you're,
Yeah.
They run this video.
okay.
It will be there. I mean, with adult guidance and direction and facilitation, but the students will, so like the weekly, like if they have a weekly show or a daily, something that comes out or a podcast that maybe comes out, that's student led and directed, with of course an adult overseeing that. So the main purpose is not for us to like push out emergency information,
Right.
but would be for them to do planned and scheduled and organized, events, broadcasting activities. So you have like a green room space that can also be used for other recordings that may come out at other times, but it is almost like what Ms. Gallagher was saying, it doesn't have to be a pathway, but it is a student run opportunity. So like we have in our elementary schools. Many of our elementary schools have broadcasts every morning where students go in, they do the news, they do the weather, they do announcements, they say what's up for breakfast or lunch. So that happens already at many of our schools on a daily basis. I don't know if that answers.
Kind of. I mean, because I'm also looking at. I mean, I can see that's that may be the primary focus. But I'm looking at it when we did all these surveys of parents, you know, when the GSBA surveys and the World Cafe and all that kind of thing. The biggest issue, and I think that Dr. Anderson would agree, was the issue of communication. You know, that folks didn't feel like the district communicated enough. Now, you're always going to have people saying that, but obviously the fewer people that say it, they say, I know exactly what's happening in the school district. So I see this as not just an internal thing with the students, but also in terms of the community. And maybe I'm seeing it wrong.
But the students are creating it to go to
Right.
the community,
Right.
right? So I don't know. I think I'm still missing something. So it is a communication piece for the community, but it's student created,
Mhm.
right?
And student managed or
See,
student
well,
driven.
I guess and this is the last.
Kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, like Blueprint and like Odyssey, like we have high school journalism programs, but it's another medium. So instead of just written, it's video.
Okay, I just say I asked one more question and then I shut up. But I guess what I'm talking about, if it's a pathway, then it would fit under the Career Academy as a pathway, and we're working at certification, we're working at training of students or whatever. If it's a wing of your office, and which goes under school school district communication, then I mean, you can certainly utilize the opportunity, but is your office supervising it, or is it going to be kind of turned over to the Career Academy? I guess is my question.
So it's not a Career Academy pathway.
Nothing to do with
It has nothing to do with the career. I mean, not say nothing.
right.
Students out of the broadcast program could very well. So think of it a work-based learning high school internship program. We're an internship site. Similar to, we have interns that work with Ms. Doris in the front as office manager. We have students who sometimes work in our operations department. It's an internship opportunity. So our students' internship will be operating and managing CCSD TV, or let me just stop calling it a name, our local news broadcast station. So they'll be in charge of going out, getting the stories. If they hear something interesting is happening and they want to report on it, they would work on the report, and then they would be in charge of developing the news station. So it wouldn't be daily. Daily would be a lot to produce. I think when we start out, probably every couple of weeks, and then we'll tier it based off of their responsibilities. But it would all go out to the parents. It's very much an external communications tool, but it does not replace anything we do now. We'll continue to do text notifications if there's emergencies. We'll still do phone calls, emails. We actually sent out an email today, parents, reminding them to update their information because we are making updates in our Blackboard system. So we want to make sure all parents are receiving attendance notifications, emergency communications. So that will continue to exist. But internally, we also want to make sure we have another avenue. And video has not been an avenue we've tapped in yet as a district. We recognize there's a gap there that we could fill. We could use our students because they're brilliant, and they could help capture stories, and they could help to tell those stories to our community. So I hope that kind of answers it a bit. Ms. Davis. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Holt.
Let me look into the camera. I would love for the Department of Journalism at UGA to work closely with our students and give them some scholarships. Just want to say that.
Thank you.
I like that. So my comment's a little bit different. Well, it's not actually. I just want to know what our cost is going to be and how we're going to track that cost. Because I really love putting a program in place, and I love being on the ground floor of a program. So if we can see that budget and we can start trending that, I would be delighted.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is we're using with our generation, this generation, as they're definitely a different generation than me. We're able to tap into many low-cost tools, YouTube being a free platform, us already having a YouTube channel. And then most of our video equipment exists because we've had digital communication specialist positions. So for Mr. Tavon Knight, when we were recording videos for the convocation, most of the equipment already exists. It's just about how we set it up in that lab. So it'll be fairly low cost, but I can get that budget to Dr. Thomas so she can give it to the board.
Well, that's what the beauty of it. If we can create something out of low cost, then high value and low cost, everybody loves that. And that's the thing that I want to be able to tell people about. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one more, but it's more about the climate and culture survey. So I can see that maybe a year from now or 2 years, so after doing an initial climate and culture survey, after having this going, then we got a lot of people who say that we're doing a good job, will that, and maybe that's a Mr. Gasson's question, will the survey adjust at some point so that we can monitor something other than people saying yes or no, y'all are communicating good?
That may be a Mr. Gaskins, but I think we use the
GSBA.
GHSA survey.
So, but we don't have a district level one where we monitor culture and climate. Sorry.
So yes and no.
Okay.
So we use the climate survey that's required by the state. And then schools create their own customized surveys to learn a little bit more on like a particular area. So we could definitely create a survey as a district if we want specific, a specific area, but we usually do use the one that's mandated by the state.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentations. Thank you all.
All right, thank you very much. We will move forward to our informational items, and these are our different reports. Were there any follow-up questions or discussion about the early Head Start? This is 6-1. Mr. Davis?
This grant is giving us a lot of opportunity to expand our staff. Have we started posting? Okay, and if so, are the wages comparable to what they currently are? Is that okay? So we would probably find out more in terms of when we redo the salary schedule, right?
That's correct. And I think Dr. Blankenship will be providing some updates on where we are with all of our compensation work in this Friday. Tomorrow, board update, and next week. Just general information on where we are, but as you know, we've been working with USCA, and we are doing a lot of work around the compensation study. So she's continuing that, and we're making pretty good progress, I would say. And she can give you an overview. It will be an overview. We already talked about that in tomorrow's board update.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, is that something that's going to be, when it really shakes out, will it just be within the proposed budget for the next school year? Is that?
Yes, sir.
That's when we're actually kind of see the dollars and cents?
Because we will have more information on what those numbers look like, and we will be able to bring a recommendation to the board for our budget.
Okay, so that's, what month is that? Is that usually in March?
Is there a microphone that could
First
be
budget
passed?
presentation is in April.
Okay. All right. Moving forward to the Athens Community Career Academy report. Any questions or follow-up discussion there?
At some point, I would like to have a conversation about the Career Academy expansion as we move out and go over to our new location. I read in their minutes, they're talking about, recovering this space, and I'm curious as to where we're having a conversation about what does that expansion look like for us.
Yes, ma'am. We are having a meeting tomorrow to begin not to begin, but to discuss some options for them and looking at what some pathway expansions are going to look like and what those needs are. So we are having those conversations already, and we can get an update to you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Just made a note.
Any additional questions or discussion?
I wanted to also thank it was a great meeting with the board last month, and I appreciate that. There was a good exchange of information, and the minutes reflect that exchange. And I had questions in the past about again, with Senate Bill 68 and the expanded need for financial reporting and accountability and tracking, I want to make sure that we've closed all the loops on any of that as well, as we move into some new space and start looking at new programs and expansion.
Okay, moving forward to the Splost monthly report. Additional comments, questions, or discussion?
I
Ms.
think I was-
Davis?
Me again?
Mhm.
Okay, great. So I was really surprised, and I don't know if I just missed it before, that it's almost $1 million to expand the kitchen at the Early Learning Center. Is that right?
Yes, I say yes. Mr. Gilbert is here. That's correct. So we will be expanding that to be I'm sorry, I wish I knew the right word. Not a restaurant type kitchen, but so you're talking about the are you talking about the work here or at the Early Learning Center?
I'm right now talking about, I thought I saw a line item that said it's like $900,000 to build a kitchen at the Early Learning Center.
So that's the one there because we'll be actually having a kitchen in the early learning. Right now, food is transported. And so this will be the kitchen that's used for our culinary arts program and will be an instructional kitchen, but then we're having to outfit, equip, update the kitchen in the early learning center. So at their building.
At a cost of $1 million. Are we tearing down walls? I'm just curious as to what.
I will have to look at, I'm sorry, I don't do the construction, so I will look to Mr. Gilbert to give you those details.
I don't know if I've ever seen a plan or anything of that nature, so that's why I'm asking these questions.
Yes, we're expanding early learning kitchen to where they can actually cook and prepare food across the way versus right now is pretty much a warming station and a serving station. So it'll be a full-blown kitchen with cooler, freezer, preparation area, area to prepare the food. $300,000 of that money is for equipment upgrades and expansion. So it's expensive.
Are we also altering the physical structure of the building? Are we having to add more space?
Yes, we added about 1,500 square feet on the outside of the building.
Is there a floor plan or something that we could get a look at?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
I do have a question while you're there. So I remember in that book you gave us that the expansion of this kitchen was a high priority, and I too don't remember the Office of Early Learning being in that book. But will that still happen?
Yeah, in order for us to do this, we have to be able to move over there first.
Okay.
So we've got to get the nutrition folks out of here across the road, and then we can expand culinary program here. But I believe we're working on some academic items on the culinary program to finalize exactly what we want to do here.
So upon construction of this kitchen, it was a commercial kitchen, right? And so
Yes.
it's still going to be a commercial kitchen with some new added features and benefits or something that we don't know about?
Yes.
Okay. And so
Yeah, he wants to double the capacity of the items underneath the hood, and it's a different kind of food preparation. You need different equipment, and he also wants some preparation stations out in this space, which requires sink, electrical hookup, and things like that. So you can have groups of students that are actually preparing, the same meal, the same component of the meal in the prep station areas.
So we're altering what used to be a
Yes.
seating area for the cafeteria. That is now going to become instructional space
For the culinary
for the
program.
culinary club. And so have the people that really invested heavily in the design of this building and the rehabilitation of this building seen those plans, and are they aware of them? They obviously can't change them, but I would think we would at least.
Right. Right now, there's no plans. We're still in the design concept for that area, but that's kind of in conjunction with the Career Academy and what they want to do going forward and expanding their pathways and things like that.
And so for me, this building is more than just the Career Academy. It is a part of the historic restoration and preservation of the H.T. Edwards campus. And I would really like for us to include that voice in our plans and in our planning so that the community is not caught off guard when they open the door and it's no longer what they built.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions related to that? I would imagine that would, Dr. Thomas, that would simply come through the board updates to the board. I don't know that the board is asking for anything concrete. Ms. Davis, can you clarify what it is I hear you saying sharing the information and the updates, but what specifically?
So I know I can't speak for the board, but as a board member and a
Right.
member of this community and a part of the conversations that went into developing, designing, making sure that this building retained its historic significance to the African American community, it was very important to them. They thought that this was going to be a cafe and that we were going to be able to come in and do, it would be like a business that would be run out of here. And so now if we're moving in that direction, I would think it would be great to bring that group back together, to bring them up to date on what the new plans are for the expansion of the culinary program at the school. I've heard too many times about the disappointment of the Yellow Jacket Cafe becoming the Buzz Cafe. The Yellow Jackets had significance because it was the mascot of the African American school. And the community wasn't consulted. And so they had concerns. And so as we move forward, again, the significance of this renovation was to preserve this piece of African American culture in Athens, Clarke County public education. I would like those same voices to be at the table as this new design evolves. It's my request.
Any other thoughts around that, board colleagues?
I would just support that. I mean, if the purpose.
You speak a little bit louder. That's
Sure.
all.
So I would support that. If we're looking at making sure that certain cultures are preserved, historically preserved here, then making sure that we have those voices at the table, I would think that would be very important to what was initially set out to do by the board.
I'm putting on my board hat. I would support that.
Okay. All right. Any follow-up questions or any? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
We will move forward with our board committee reports. We'll start with policy committee in Dr. Yeager's absence. Ms. Hull, I know she has a summary here for us.
Yeah, she provided a really good report. I'm happy to answer any questions that the rest of the board may have in her stead.
I did just have a follow-up, Ms. Hall, and probably should have circled around to you before the meeting, but have you been able to find any other practices as far as the replacement of board members? I know that was one thing that was listed in here.
Yes, so I have not, but I'm very excited about this new search feature with Assembly because it should make it a lot easier.
Okay.
So we aren't waiting for that in order to look at the policy. That will be not a regulation, but more of a practice about how we go about filling that, but the policy itself is in compliance with state law right now.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions?
I don't think I understood that exchange.
What was that, Ms. Davis?
I didn't understand that exchange that you guys just had.
So, if it's not clear, I'll try again. But we were looking at policy A, B, C, D, A to look at the board members and their unexpired terms and how we feel that. And so the policy itself isn't an issue. It's complying with state law, but there are some different gaps in kind of what process we would follow or what we would kind of use to do that. And we were going to look at what some other school districts were doing and get some ideas from them to see if we could help as a district flesh that out. And it will be, as we talked about it in policy, and Mr. Davis, if I'm getting this wrong, please do jump in. It will kind of fall in line as to what we consider to be a regulation somewhat, but it will kind of be taken out of that wheelhouse because it deals directly with the board and the board member fulfillment. So there was the idea that board members should really consider and talk to some other board, school district boards to figure out how we do that since it isn't a strict regulation that will be governed by the district itself. Does that make sense?
It does, and now that triggers my thoughts when I was reading this. It sounds like for this particular policy, because it's affecting the board, we were not going to ask our secretary and treasurer to work this through her team.
That is correct. So
What about our attorney?
Well, I'll let Mr. Pruitt speak. He's definitely been at the policy meeting, but the walk away was maybe talk to some other board members from different districts to see how they were handling it and work it through that way and come to the full board with some type of proposal or ideas or initial discussion session, since it does affect the board and it's not the typical regulation that you would see run by the district.
No, I think you're just talking about the details, how you can get applicants that and interview whatever.
Okay, thank you. So you'll keep us updated what,
Yes.
as you, okay. All right, we'll move forward to the government and community relations information that was listed here. I do want to say, Mr. Davis, before you start speaking, I'm very appreciative of the analysis that you all provided of the results. I think it was, I really am not sure that the board as 9 people could have gotten through all of the different results. So I do appreciate that. It was very useful in preparing for our cognitive visit and just sort of understanding and being able to look at the different themes and patterns across the responses. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, Dr. Mumby Dr. Anderson did a wonderful job with the GSBA survey. I'm going to take these documents a little bit. First off, let me understand. If I understood what Dr. Gant, what your communication was to me, is that we're not voting on anything tonight dealing with this. However, what I am going to be asking for is either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Do we continue to work? Because what I'm covering now tonight are items that that the Government and Community Relations Committee is pushing forward, but it's no sense, but they involve the entire board. And so if there's not interest in the board to continue on these items, then, as chair, I would really appreciate knowing that so that we won't, spend effort doing something that's not supported by the board. This will become more obvious as we go through this. The first document is the legislative agenda. Is the bottom one. I'm kind of skipping around, Lisa, so excuse me. But this is something that's on our website. It is still current in terms of the emphasis. This was developed and modified over the years, and it is addressed to the legislative delegation that represents Clark County in specific, and in general the legislature as a whole and the governor's office. So there's some things I've highlighted here because the numbers have probably changed because they change every year. And so if this is something that, we want to continue to have a legislative agenda, then, this is something that I will make sure as chair of the committee that this is updated, that the data represents, with the current status and not last year's status.
Legislative to add something within enough time for us to be able to discuss it. Do we do that here with this particular resolution?
Okay, first off, we're just, let's see. Okay, I guess I'm not clear. Can you say that again?
Yeah, so the resolution, the document with the legislative agenda,
Right.
this is our
Clark County.
resolution.
This is
Okay.
this is Clark County, and it was developed. Actually, the impetus of it came from Dr. Parrish, and it was picked up by Dr. Means, and we continued it as a committee. This is something that was seen as what would push forward the education of our children in Clark County. And you could say it kind of a wish list from in terms of state funding.
Okay.
So that was the purpose of that. Now there are some pieces in there that are not directly state funded, particularly in terms of giving our DACA students opportunities to further their education.
Okay. I guess I'm just wondering, and maybe this is a conversation later, because I heard you mention January too, as we talk about the what is it? The HR is working on the compensation. Yes, like, where might any of those specific points of advocacy fit? Because at some point you run into funding issues. And I'm just thinking of some of the things that have already been placed in the thought exchange and, things like that as far as directions that we're going. Just thinking around, for instance, the retirement for our classified staff, things like that. Like, where might we at least, where might that fit, and maybe that's something that comes later. I don't know. I can never remember the parameters of our actual legislative agenda and when we can add and take it away and things like that. But
Well, I mean, now is the time.
okay.
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 But in terms of what you're saying, like for instance, in terms of the pre-K and the funding for pre-K teachers and parapros, this district is making up the difference that should be made up by the state. I mean, the state has a salary schedule, and because pre-K and teachers and parapros are funded through the lottery and not directly out of the state budget, they were left off. And as a consequence, they were thousands of dollars in the hole compared to their colleagues in K-12 education. So we made up the difference, which is great. I'm glad we were able to do that. Most school districts didn't have the resources to do that. But that's the type of thing that we have used the legislative agenda for, is when we meet with our legislators in particular and say these are the things that would help education in Clark County. So that's when. Go ahead.
I think you were answering it. I'm trying to wrap my head around, as a new school board member, how this becomes actionable advocacy. Since we can't endorse, promote, do those types of things. So does this become actionable just by virtue of handing this to our representatives and saying, this is what we want, or is there something else? And is that different coming from the school district versus each one of us going to a representative or going to our own representatives? I'm just trying to understand how this becomes actionable, since it's a lot different from other boards I've served on.
Well, in this discussion tonight, we're also going to have to decide whether or not we're going to meet with our delegation. So when we meet with them, what are we going to present to them? But I think in answer to your question, if we were the Atlanta school district, and their legislative agenda is covered by their daily newspaper, I doubt ours will be. One thing that we passed a resolution earlier on, in response to the governor, the Georgia Board of Education resolution that was passed earlier this summer, when the governor said he wanted opposition to what he called critical race theory, and we passed, but no one knew it because we never pushed it out, and we're a very small market, so it's not like something that you got 3 journalists sitting in the audience ready to write a story on it. So, and so you could say, well, we're so small, why do we even engage in this process? I will just argue that I think that engaging in with our state legislators and pushing this stuff out and asking Dr. Thomas and her team to help us push it out. I mean, it is on the website, and it's always been on the website. So,
I
Ms.
really
Davis?
support our legislative agenda, and I really appreciate the opportunity to sit face to face with our state representatives and our national representatives so that they can tell us, how they feel about this. In the last meeting that I went to that we had with them, it was very clear that this became almost a partisan line issue. But if we didn't have those meetings with them, they would never know that we haven't changed our mind. We still think that these are the priorities and these are the things that we need for our district. The piece that I think that I see missing here is when we're giving the numbers of what was spent by us versus what where the gaps are and where we can lay the responsibility for closing those gaps. I think that's a stronger conversation for us to have with them as well. And just from the things that I've been reading about some of the decisions coming out of the state, I think these are really good things to bring up. But again, as it relates to what's important to Athens Clarke County, where we need legislative relief, if we don't bring it to them, then it doesn't have a voice at all. And then our second place for it to have a voice is, of course, at the GSBA conference coming up in the summer as they build that legislative agenda for GSBA. And honestly, there are 2 or 3 on here that I think we really want to do some more work on in terms of promoting them and making sure that the legislators know our position in terms of how we support this legislation or not.
So just one follow-up question. So does the entire board meet with the delegation? Okay. And when does that normally happen?
it normally happens in December,
Okay,
and it did not.
okay.
We've got one other bite at the apple, and that would be in early January. And that's why, we're going to have to move fairly quickly if this is if this is the direction that this board is committed to continuing. So I'm just, so I would take responsibility for, working with Dr. Thomas and her staff to update the numbers. And then if I can slide into something that what I've done, there's another piece that I'm going to turn to now, if I can. Lisa, can you look at the resolution of workforce development for me, please? Now, this is something, and I will be in just being all up front. This is something that we talked about in concept at the Government Community Relations Committee meeting, the last one we had, but it was not fleshed out. So I pushed it out, to the committee members at the same time that I sent it to Dr. Thomas and the board officers, and to Mr. Harrison, and certainly a lot of fingers should be mixed in with this. I mean, I'm not, but the thing is that what I was trying to do is that because we are, as flush with, flush is the wrong word. I would say because our budget is healthy, I chose to pull out. We talked about workforce development as being which is also part of the item 6 of our legislative agenda. Which is, we have students. We're graduating seniors who realistically can't go to college. I know during the family fun day, the family event, I talked to a young lady who actually had a opportunity to go to college, and she's not in college because of the status of her and her parents. And so what this does is it asks that's one of the items is that the band that keeps students who don't have the correct documentation but have graduated from K-12 schools, they would have the opportunity to go and pay in-state tuition at least some of our institutions. But along with that, and in terms of the actual points that were given at the bottom of this resolution, they come from the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, the other points, where we've got needs-based scholarships. And this is also mentioned in our legislative agenda as well, under item 5. There is a law that says these scholarships will be made available. It's just not funded. So we asked to do that. We asked to fully restore hope. And so actually what I've done is I've taken, if you look at the legislative agenda, 5 and 6, I've pulled them out into a resolution on workforce development, emphasizing those two in the same way. And I'm not saying Ms. Davis would have pulled the same ones, but in terms of focusing, if we look at our legislative agenda, we have 6 items. 2 of the items we've turned into a resolution to emphasize the importance of it, because the other pieces of our legislative agenda we're able to cover with our budget right now. So anyway, I throw those 2 together and ask for comment.
Thanks. My only comment is really a question about where we go from here, which I guess is a similar question to what was asked earlier. But so we have the legislative agenda, and then you explained that this resolution is pulling 2 pieces out to emphasize them. So if we had a meeting with our legislators, would we present, is your idea to present the entire legislative agenda, or to present the resolution, or both? Or I guess
Both.
More like process.
Both, but to emphasize these 2 items because they are directly related. They're not so much, they are funding issues, but they're funding issues for post-secondary education. And so, and both of them deal directly with what the state says they're committed to, which is career and workforce development. So, so I guess present both, but emphasize what's on the screen now on the workforce development.
So just framing it in a different way. It's the same information, but
Right.
sort of framed in a different way.
Right.
So this is,
Ms. Davis?
as I read, this is for undocumented.
No, this is only the 4th bullet is the undocumented. When we talk about the needs-based scholarships, that's for all students who qualify for post-secondary education, but need extra assistance.
I'm just very familiar with an awful lot of work happening around this initiative for workforce development. And so I certainly can support it. I just want to make sure that we are explicit in what we're asking for here as a resolution. And is this the resolution that we would put forward as the priority for our district? How many of our students are impacted by this? When we have also all of and are they impacted by the free 16 pathways that they can get in technical college
But see, if they're
that are also supported here at the Career Academy?
but if they're having to come up with 25% of the tuition at Athens Technical College, plus their room and board and other expenses, it used to be a full scholarship at one time.
Because Athens Tech, of course, we don't do room and board or anything like that. So I'm curious. I want us to be factual when we put this out there. So I'm just. The article I read today was totally, and it was a great article too. I'll send it to you from the New York Times. And it was about this very same thing. So yeah, I can certainly support us having a workforce development resolution. But I think what I'm hearing from the community and from the people that are kind of boots on the ground is that trying to get the word out about the 16 free pathways that the technical college system of Georgia is already supporting will also be a big initiative for us to push.
Yeah, I think
For inclusion.
I think they're 12 and not 16, but maybe I'm wrong.
They're 16.
Oh, they're 16. But there are a lot of pathways that are not fully funded.
Right.
And so I think
those
if,
are the free ones. I'm not talking about the ones like nursing
Right.
that you got to pay to get into beyond CNA.
right.
So
So
the read programs totally.
okay, but there are minus the programs that they say are in critical need. We used to have a Hope scholarship, a Hope grant for all students at Athens Technical College.
So that's really the big issue is how hope has been reduced in terms of, okay, so yeah, that would be the resolution I would really support.
And I'm wondering, Mr. Davis, if this is, from listening to Dr. Dykeman's question and Ms. Davis, and we have a short window of time. And so, I don't know if the board feels that we need to, have a call meeting to discuss this more, or if we're okay with that. And I always feel with this, it always feels like it comes up so soon. Then before you know it, we're at that summer place where we're, talking about the legislative agenda of the GSBA. And so I don't know. I personally feel like it's worth some more conversation so we can be very specific about what we're asking for. But I also recognize that, we are under a deadline, and that means another call meeting. And so I mean, they aren't bad. They are necessary. I just want to be sure we're advocating for the things that, that it's a comprehensive agenda of advocating for the things that impact our students. So those are my thoughts, but certainly, it just depends on what the board wants. And what I hear you saying is that the next step is then for us to meet with our representatives.
That's what we decide to do.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm not going to fall on my sword, but if that's what the will of the board is.
Dr. Dykeman?
It sounds like most people support the idea in general, just based on what people are saying. I wonder if we could, it obviously would take some time to schedule a meeting. Is it possible to get some kind of consensus on whether we want to schedule a meeting with the legislators, and then prior to that meeting, have another meeting of the board to make sure that everyone's comfortable with what will be proposed at that meeting?
I like that.
I would support that.
I can support that.
Mr. Davis, is that something you can do?
Yeah,
Okay.
like I said, whenever the board wants.
Okay.
I guess the point is that we've got a meeting in January. Do we want to do, I mean, I don't want to work on these documents if it's not, if it's not the direction that the board wants to go in. Do we want to have something that we've passed to when we talk to the legislators or not? If it is, then we're going to have to do it quickly, because when they go in session in the last week in January, then you're not going to catch them after that. So I think it's a matter first, if we want to have a meeting, do we want to have anything in writing that represents an agenda? I'm just.
And I think what we're saying is that we want to have a meeting. So if you could confirm a time for the meeting,
Okay.
and then that we also want to meet again. We know we want a legislative agenda, but we need to flesh, just sort of tease out some things.
Okay.
And, if it's a call meeting, we certainly can take action, after we make any revisions and things like that, we would, we can take action if need be, take action on that the agenda, the legislative agenda or resolution or, whatever the products are of that meeting.
Maybe we could develop a joint agenda for them so that we won't miss each other. Because I can tell you right now, 3 of them are not going to go with this voucher thing. They've already told us point blank they're going to support the voucher thing, right? So there's no point in beating that horse. But we could have a conversation maybe and come up with a compromise or something that might work for all of us, as opposed to walking in there with these resolutions and saying, we can talk it. Let's try and solve the problem together. Maybe that would be an approach, and then you don't have to do that extra work.
Okay, so I won't work on the paperwork. I just work on trying to schedule this meeting.
And once you schedule the meeting, if you could let the board know so that then we can use that to determine when we would need to do a call meeting for this specific purpose.
Okay. I mean, it's probably going to have to be, and I can reach out, but it will probably have to be the second week in January. I mean, so it's really going to cram us, but that's what I will do. I will set up a meeting.
Thank
if I
you.
can go ahead and continue, because we do have another event. Lisa, if you could go to the youth development in Clark County. Yeah, proposal for the January meeting. Yeah, thank you. This is something again that we talked about in principle at the Government and Community Relations Committee meeting. And again, it's if it's the will of the board to push forward, then I'm certainly willing to do more work on this and take people's suggestions and feedback and that type of thing. If it's not something that this body is interested in pursuing, or they want to pursue it at a later time or whatever, then I won't do that. For those new board members, this will be our 6th joint county commission school board meeting. The agenda, it's arranged a little bit differently, but we have done it before we went virtual. We did have breakout sessions and that type of thing with our commissioners. What we saw as the Government and Community Relations Committee is looking at youth development. I mean, we always kind of go back to the issue of youth development, because that's the one thing that I think most of us feel that we have in common with our commissioners. Because youth have families, and commissioners are worried about families and concerned about families, and we're worried about parents and our students. So, but keeping in mind what the Government and Community Relations Committee members are always saying, action, 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 action. We want action. So, an action plan. So what we were hoping to get out of a discussion on youth development is not just looking at the maps of, and the schedules and what's happening in this coming summer, not just any summer, but this summer, just getting right in front of the horse, is to have these breakout sessions based on district. And so, I got maps, and these could be mixed up any way you want to, but it's to me it seemed that because I did write this, and so if it's something that people disagree with, they want to redo it, that's fine too. I guess it's a matter of we traditionally have these meetings in January, and Clark County School District is in charge of, or this board is in charge of the January meeting agenda, and then in August it's up to the county commission and the mayor to set up the agenda. So in January we are the host, and in August they are the host. And so anyway, I've just put that out there for your benefit, and again, just looking for some direction in terms of what this board would like to do.
So I do want to. So at that meeting, we also talked about homework for all board members. Getting with your commissioner and talk about 3 areas I got pulled up, and sharing information with the commissioner that is associated with. Like if I'm District 2 school board member, I would talk to the District 2 commissioner and have a conversation with her before that meeting, so that when we came to the meeting, it was more productive, and we could share out information about the needs in our district by sharing, cross communicating with from a school board member to a commissioner, communicating what where the gaps are for you, and then bringing that back to the whole group, and having a more robust discussion so that we can move forward. It's easier to move forward with action so that we're not staying in the weeds longer than we are with action. I think I said that right.
And so what you all want from board members between now and that time is for us to speak with our commissioners about some of these particular,
So the 3 things that we came up with were equity, youth violence, and literacy. And I don't see it up there either, but that's what we talked about in our meeting.
okay. And so before that meeting, you all are asking us to get together with them and just talk about equity, youth violence, and what was the other one? Literacy, and just any ideas that they have as far as ways that the school district and the county can work together or
To address those
okay.
issues.
Okay.
Specifically the resources in that district.
Okay. Is there any way that someone from the committee can just send us those 2 or 3 sentences? Or is it, because I don't think I see the 3 areas in here, but I just want to be sure all of us are.
Yeah, I'll put it real quick.
Okay, perfect.
And that was supposed to be my task, I think. I think Greg and we dropped the ball on sending this email out for this meeting to kind of prepare the group about coordinating with the commissioners. And as Greg noted further down the document, there are a couple of different school district versus commission district lines. So we just need to make a decision about who specifically we are going to meet with. Is it going to be, based on like who are we specifically gonna work with on the commissioner side? So we just need to make that determination as well, so that outreach can happen appropriately.
I have a
Ms. Davis.
I'm just really boots on the ground looking at these issues. And so I'm curious as to what's our objective here?
So I don't know if we're doing a very good job of communicating this, but the objective, because we meet with the commissioners twice a year, and at those meetings, there's a lot of robust discussion about what needs to happen, but not as many action items about what is going to happen moving forward. The attempt this time is to work with the commissioners in your district, have a conversation that's really robust about what is currently happening and where the gaps exist as we see them, so that we have a consensus about what's going on in our districts to bring to the table at this joint meeting. So that rather than spending the first hour talking about what problems do exist and what gaps do exist, we've already done that background work and we're just reporting that to the group and then saying, okay, now how do we utilize the resources that we currently have in both the district and the commissioner's purview, that we can combine efforts to move forward with something tangible that we are going to do.
So are we looking at physical structures?
Not necessarily, no.
Are we looking at programming?
Yes.
And again, so I'm struggling here with my funny little shaped district. Where am I going to get my information?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Where will I get the information about what's happening in my district around equity, youth violence, and literacy, to have the conversation with my commissioner? What's my source? Is it just stuff that I know from talking to people, or is there something that we think we have already that I can reference to have this conversation?
Yeah. One of the things that was mentioned in the meeting was just sort of like mapping out what facilities we do have available in our district. So do we have deserts in certain areas of the community for libraries, for example, or parks, or places where kids can study or things like that? So you can start there. But then, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that we collectively know some of the needs in our community, so we can start that conversation there. And then if we can identify in our smaller groups how we can get the information that we need to determine where these gaps exist, then perhaps in those small groups, they could be almost like working groups that we're bringing them back to because we would have had to have done this work anyway. So why not do it before we get to the commission meeting rather than doing it at the commission meeting? We consistently talk about doing inventories and doing data collection and asking the community and all of this. So if that's something that we determine in our smaller groups that we need to do, we can do that before our January meeting so that the January meeting is productive.
This sounds like one of the initiatives that happened with the COVID experience, when we were looking for community partners, places where we might be able to reach out. I don't know. Is that something that we had here, or is that something I read about somewhere else? I don't know. I'm just trying to get to. I don't mind having a meeting with the commissioners that are in these districts. I just don't know what our conversation is going to produce, and who's going to use our output. And is this an overlap with what's happening with our community engagement department? I just want to better understand what our goal is here.
And so if I may just interject, Mr. Davis, I know we've sort of been here on this particular area for a while. And so we can try to move along, but go ahead and, finish the clarification. And if there's, I guess if there are some additional clarity that's needed, then, if members can follow up with you, unless it's something that all of us need to know. I think we have the charge, which is meeting with commissioners, discussing the problems around those three topics, but more so ideas for collaboration. How we go about doing that might look different amongst us. And so, Mr. Davis and Dr. Anderson, if you can finish clarifying, but then if we can move along a bit quicker.
Yeah, I can. Let me just say a couple things. One thing is that if I think we do need data point, I think we need the information that Ms. Davis is asking for. I think we just need to identify what that information is. For instance, and I'm going to give an example. I want to make it crystal clear that I've got three schools in my district that do not have transportation. So if you have summer programming at those three schools, there is no public transportation to those schools. Okay, that is a deficit in my opinion. On another topic, and this came out at the Opportunity of Black Education that Dr. Thomas and her staff presented at one of the staff members, and I'm sorry, Dr. Thomas, I never met the person, but talked about the fact that, we talk about libraries, we have, two libraries. In actuality, she said we have multiple libraries because we have a library in every school. Now, is that a Soraya, we're Soraya. Okay. Yeah, I loved it. But that's exactly right. We have libraries in every one of our schools. So is that a place that we can utilize in the summertime for kids in that neighborhood? These are, but again, I don't know what we would have to ask the school district, how do they utilize their libraries? So I think, I think if we actually focus on, what we're trying to do here and say, what do I need? I need to know the bus routes. That's what I need for District 1. I want to know what the bus routes are. I'm going to keep talking about bus routes. So I want a map of the bus routes. So, and I'm going to keep asking for that. So that's one thing I want to need. I'm going to see if there are libraries within District 1, school libraries that can be utilized in the summertime for kids in that area. I'm going to ask. So I think if we each of us approach it that same way and see, and if you will let the committee members know what information you need, either from the county or from the school district, we will try to collect that information and have it there for you.
I think as board members who were elected by the community, we should be able to and know how to go out and collect information on our constituents and anything in the county. I don't want to volunteer to do anything extra for anybody else that you can do for yourself.
Okay, so if there are follow-up questions, if you could just reach out to Mr. Davis, Dr. Anderson, and Dr. Maddox, and Ms. Gallagher's 4 people, right? If there are any changes, I guess, that we are recommending to this agenda, and sort of speak now or forever hold your peace, because I would imagine this is an agenda you all will need to send to them sooner rather than later. Ms. Davis?
This document right now?
Yeah, I'm thinking like the agenda is going to be pulled from the bottom of this document.
I am, I'm having trouble with the district not leading this summer program initiative. Is that what I'm seeing here? Focus on summer programming for youth development. I'm just struggling with that, but I'm sure I can outgrow in time.
Dr. Thomas, do you have any feedback or comments about this?
It was my understanding from the meeting that what Mr. Davis was trying to determine is what resources are in the community as a whole for students in the summer, and what is it that's available for students to be able to access. And so examining, sorry, let me take my glasses off. when they're examining in terms of recreational school properties that can be utilized. So yes, if we are doing anything at our schools, it of course would have to go through us because we have to look at summer school space availability. But it was my understanding, so maybe the way it's written wasn't completely how we discussed it, and someone else can correct me, but it was really to do an audit essentially of what's already there, what's being done, offered at the schools, what's being offered in the community, what's being done by Parks and Recreation, different community groups, not to plan activities for the summer at the schools. Did I capture that, Dr. Anderson? Mr. Davis?
Just asset
Okay.
mapping, just what it is. Asset
Yes.
mapping. What do
Yes.
we have or
Yes.
don't?
So really doing an audit of what's already there and being provided, not to plan for the school district. So then we would know in terms of working collaboratively with ACC Gov where the gaps are and what areas need to be addressed.
So much clearer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mr. Davis, if you could, I know there were two more. Were there two more items that you needed to give us a summary over, or did you?
Or, and mainly they're not really for discussion because they've been out there. We've got, we did have a World Cafe, and we had proposals that came out, action items for BOE community event. What do we do with it? I don't know. We've got Dr. Anderson spent a lot of time consolidating the comments from the Georgia School Board Association, which was sent to everyone and became part of the data for the Cognia. What do we do with this information? And what's our process? We tell the community, we want feedback. We want to hear from you. What you got to say? How can we do things better? But then if we don't examine what people give us, then after a while, they're going to say, why are you asking my opinion? It's not going to impact the way you do business. So I just lay that out there because I think I should.
So I know one of the purposes or one of the uses of the data that was shared by you all, the results of the survey will also be shared with the advisory committee, so that they can then share feedback around any ideas, any suggestions or actions for the board and the district to consider. But that will, board members will be at that meeting because board members are a part of that committee. And then as it relates to the action items from the community event on September 14th, I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts, but I think that the first step is figuring out what's already being done. Because it could be portions of the action items that are already being done. What portion of it falls within the district's purview? I think that's the one of the biggest pieces. And then what part also falls within, our, responsibility or purview. But that's an opinion, one of 9. I don't know that. I think part of the work is being able to communicate what we've done with the information, but not just new things, but it could be things that we're already doing and being able to capture that as well. And then if there are some new things, I'm sure there are, figuring out whose role that is, whose responsibility, and also where does it fit? Where might it fit under our strategic plan? And that, the actions that you were taking there too. So I'm hoping people don't get too discouraged, but it is a process. We typically don't gather information and then you see all of these different things change. I think you do have to assess what is it that we're doing, and then focusing in on what are we going to do differently, and then what's the timeline for that. But I welcome other, thoughts definitely before we leave this, because that feedback is critical around our functioning as a district as well as a board.
Well, I know as a person, I'm one who, I've stopped going to meetings and giving surveys because I never get feedback, and I believe our community will feel the same way. So I don't know if we pull out the things that are board related and find a way to do just what you just said, synthesize it and see what's being done, what we can commit to, and what may have to be on the timetable. And some kind of way communicate that back out to the community, not any longer than 3 months, because we'll be asking for some other survey. And so that's my suggestion. And then Dr. Thomas, she do what she do with the other part of it with her team. But I would hope that it would be the same thing, that all the information would go out to the community, some type of way being communicated.
Other thoughts?
I'm not going to be Debbie Downer on this one. I really feel strongly that what you said is absolutely on target in terms of let's do some prioritizing here and let's check our lanes to make sure that we're riding in the right ones. I think there's a lot of work to be done here, but I don't think the board should be in spaces where the district is trying to reach out and build relationships and achieve the goals of meeting the requirements of the strategic plan. I think if we're not aligned with that, then I'm curious as to why we would do this. It sounds like a lot of it sounds like the work of the district. It really does.
Are there any actions from here other than we know that we all have this information? Part of what I hear is that there are portions of this that fall under the district and will be, technically conversations for you all to have. And then I hear also maybe the importance of circling back around to our constituents and the individuals who we've asked for this information from. Even, just to communicate where we are in the process, where what we're already doing in relation to some of the feedback that we've received and where we might go. I sort of see that as ongoing, though. That doesn't seem like something you like communicate and then you're done, because some of this also may overlap with our own self-assessment. And so that's why I think, some of this is really about, prioritizing. But are there any other thoughts at least for the district to hear, for Dr. Thomas and our staff to hear? And I don't know if this is something we may even want to revisit again in January, like having space for these particular items, particularly the action items and the feedback from the community. I know we'll be talking about it in the advisory committee as well. So I don't know, maybe there'll be some recommendations from that as well that we can join with this, but not exactly sure where to go with this other than say it's out there. We all see it. Dr. Thomas, you see it. We're all aware of the strategic plan, and you are aware of what falls within your area.
I think for the results from the World Cafe event are laid out so nicely and cleanly that I feel like for those, it would be pretty easy to go through them and make some kind of table that says like, this is central office and this is board and then have another column that says like, we've started doing this, central office is in charge, whatever. Because I think that would help us move forward and see what we need to work on and prioritize. For the survey, I think it's going to be a little harder just because those are more qualitative, but the Government Relations Committee did a really nice job of trying to synthesize them. I haven't really had a chance to really go through them yet, but I think that we could probably do something like that with those as well. So as a first step, maybe we could take these 12 items and just decide whether they are central office or board, and then people could say whether or not they've been started or not. Because as we were saying, some of them might already be done, but we should figure that out. And then with the ones that haven't been, then we can think about prioritizing them or trying to combine them with things that come up in the surveys. But just to kind of take a inventory of what has been done.
Is there another Government Relations Committee meeting this month before we have the committee discussion? No? When is the next meeting? It
I mean,
passed.
I would volunteer to do that.
Okay.
I would volunteer to make a table of these 12 items and say, this is central office related, this is board related. And then the ones that are central office related would have to go to them for them to say whether they were things that were being done or whether they were things they felt like they even wanted to do. But we could take the board ones.
That'd be great. Ms. Davis and Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. We do, in answer to your question, we are going to have to do, I mean, the Government and Community Relations Committee is going to have to do something because because it sounds like we need more work to do on the joint meeting. So, committee members who, hopefully someone will take the initiative to kind of move that forward. We can meet or not meet, but yeah, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
So two things are running through my mind. One is we had the discussion before we did the survey, right? And did we decide then what we were going to do with the results of the survey and who was going to work those? Because this is not, this was done with something in mind, right? And so it sounds like, I don't remember how it came about, but I think we were very clear that it was the role of the district, right, to do the survey, who would be the superintendent, who is a 10th board member here. And then, so this would still be in her purview.
You mean the survey about board
The
governance?
analysis, yeah, absolutely. Because she's a member of the board as the secretary and the treasurer. And so again, everything that I've read and everything that I was reminded of in GSBA is that we are the board for governance and the superintendent is the person who executes on all of the running of the district. This is running of the district still to me. Now, I could be just wrong in my thinking, and I would appreciate a correction if you guys see this so radically different. But this seems to me like we're creating some work for a board that isn't staffed to do that work. Not saying that you don't have capabilities, but that is not the governance role as I understand it, unless we're supposed to be outsourcing this or hiring this. I don't understand that.
I don't
Because
think
if there were
there's,
different people in these seats, I don't know that we'd be having this conversation and this would be in our purview.
I don't know that the only work I hear that we've decided on is Dr. Dykeman organizing the feedback that we have.
That Dr. Mumby has already assessed and evaluated.
No, Dr. Dykeman organizing the action items that were listed.
Right, that Dr. Mumby created for us.
No, that's
No?
not what she created for
Okay.
the action items from the World Cafe.
Okay,
And then the results of the survey, from my understanding, that was about, board governance, that when you asked what was the reason for that, the reason for administering the survey was because that was one of the directives, actually, to gather feedback on the public's perception of board governance.
But that
And
was
right
not-
now, the only thing that's been done with that is Dr. Anderson, as a part of the Government Relations Committee, has synthesized that data and gotten us some themes as far as those lowest areas and the highest areas. And that then, that data exists for us to discuss more. It exists for us to technically eventually do the same thing, figure out what really is not us, what's district stuff, and then what's board stuff. It's just that it's at an earlier phase. It hasn't gotten to very specific action items for us to, decide what's the board and what's the district. But I would strongly disagree. There are the only actions taking place is the organizing of information. And so I'm not sure if you could clarify, what part is operations.
It sounded to me that when we did the survey, we did it with GSBA, and this was part of their work was to synthesize that information and give us some type of reporting out of that and some direction. Am I just wrong in that? And I'm fine if I'm wrong.
I think the work is on us. And Dr. Thomas, if you recall any of the conversations, and maybe Dr. Maddox, that we've had with Dr. Pauly,
Well,
and
it's not productive, and so let me stop us. Let's not continue down that road. But again, I would like for us to be conscious of and thoughtful about when we start these initiatives. Actually, how do we carry it out, and is it ours to do? Sometimes that's what I would like for us to do. So I apologize for taking us off track.
okay. Is there any additional feedback? If there's clarity still needed, I get that, but this is the work of the board. This is a directive that was given to the board. And so I'm not sure who else does the work and sits with the data about how the board governs other than the 10 of us.
Jesus, my staff, my phone. The reason why the district is in it, I believe, is because when some of the data that came through, it wasn't, even though it was about the board, the person on the other end, they made comments that were related to the district. So we can't do anything with that. So that's why we have to pull our part out and give the district their part. But it was a board. It's all about the school board.
So I would recommend us not ending the conversation permanently, but ending it for tonight around this. We've been at Government and Community Relations, I think, maybe for an hour now. And so certainly, if the board determines necessary, we can always bring some of these items back and continue the work. Everything won't be done, especially, and we haven't had a work session this month. So this is like work and board meeting. But I just want to encourage board members, if you feel that particularly that, some of these documents need to be brought back, especially around the feedback, and they probably will need to be brought back. Just being sure that you share that as the agenda is set moving forward. I'm going to ask that we move forward to fiscal responsibility.
Fiscal responsibility requested a meeting for until we make a decision about having a board, and I have not heard back from all people involved in that meeting.
All right, and so that committee needs to determine if they're going to meet.
Yes, because our meeting would have been Thanksgiving Day, and obviously we weren't here for that, and our next meeting would be Christmas, and so I've asked for an alternate date.
Okay. All right, so that would mean that myself, Ms. Gallagher, and Dr. Thomas would need to follow back up with you about
That would be so awesome.
an alternate date. Okay. Okay. All right. Accountability. All right, moving forward to our reports, our board community reports. 8-1, Athens Area Community Foundation.
I would like to thank the Athens Area Community Foundation for just being such a great partner directly and indirectly this year in terms of funding, whether it be us or nonprofits in the area with wireless and vaccination, anything that we needed. There's an organization that they've provided funding, and I want to thank them for that. Also, they've we looked into different ways to support nonprofits in terms of training, technical training, building those nonprofits up who need extra training to continue their work well. And we are focusing also on areas like mental health. And so in partnership with Resilient Northeast Georgia Coalition, there are some, what is it? Let me write this. Community resilience model training that's going on. And I sent you all a link and I sent it to Dr. Thomas. I did go to the introduction workshop today, and they look more, this training looks more at biology, the nerves, common, and it was in a way that, presented in a way that I believe that any person who works with young people, including young people, would benefit from this type of training. And so I ask you to, to review it. It is a part of a coalition. There are funds available where the executive director, Sarah McKinney, she would be happy to work with the district and make sure that she contacts Dr. Watley. You did? Yeah, so she can work directly with Ms. McKinney if you find that that's something that we might want to offer to different parts of our community, staff, coaches. So one of the comments today at the end, we had some breakouts, and it was like, what you want to see? And several of the groups talked about that they would like to see this type of training being provided to coaches, to bus drivers. So they was thinking outside of just counselors and teachers, so they said faith-based organizations, anybody who work with young people, and just want to be a support for them, not a counselor or anything like that, but just in a time of trauma, just to help them to calm down. And so it was really interesting. And so please, if you can't make the one that's taking place on Monday, there are other times that they are being offered. So thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Community Oversight Committee, I think that would be Dr. Yeager. Ms. Davis, no, that was, you said that you were going to be going to the,
I did go to the last meeting, but Mr. Davis is on that committee.
any additional questions, I should say, for Mr. Davis or Ms. Davis being in attendance at those meetings?
I think it's a very informative meeting. I'll share that out in terms of finding out exactly what's happening to a level of detail that we don't often really spend a lot of time talking about. So I felt left feeling confident that the people on the committee were getting the information that they needed, or I felt like they were getting the information they needed. I haven't talked to them about it yet, but very productive meeting. So if you haven't been to one, I would highly recommend it. Take time to go. It took me a while to make that decision, but it was a good decision.
Thank you. Any additional questions or information? And thank you for agreeing to attend also as the December person. Mr. Davis, you'll be there as well, right? So we'll still have two.
And I'll note too that in the minutes that they are still looking for new committee members. And so they have space on that committee for other community members to engage.
Thank you for highlighting that. I do. It is sort of a fascinating committee because I think the members sort of just stay until they rotate off. And so
most of them have the backgrounds to actually evaluate building and construction and spending and stuff like that. And so it's kind of interesting to hear their dynamics.
But I do think the biggest credit that the Splost committee deserves is helping to spearhead the 80% vote that we had in favor of Splost 6. So I think kudos to the organization and for, because they do what we cannot do in terms of advocating for the school district financially.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it's just a critical committee. So.
And I'll say too, from the GSBA conference, again, those counties that have Splost and actually have revenue coming in, they are doing so much better than those counties that don't have the advantage that we have. So we are quite fortunate in Clark County to have the revenues that we get from Splost. So kudos to that team and appreciation to them as well.
All right, moving on to Envision Athens.
So at the last meeting or the last executive director search committee meeting, we did actually hire someone to help with the executive director search. The next meeting for that is going to be on December the 16th, but the job has been posted. Everyone is encouraged to share the link. If you go to goodforwork.org, good F-O-R, excuse me, work for good, sorry, .org, it's posted. I'm happy to share the link and to circulate it. And at that December 16th meeting, we're supposed to get an update in terms of any candidates that have applied or just get a search update. But that position is open until December 31st.
Thank you. I don't have any updates from Georgia School Boards Association. I will ask for any sort of some backup from Mr. Davis and Ms. Davis, since I know they know more about this area than I do. I've been serving and being guided by whatever I need to, whatever I'm being told, but I don't have any updates that I can think of.
So we just came back from conference.
Yes.
So Monday was there,
Okay.
and I got to participate, and I got to go. It was
Okay.
amazing. So you wanna talk about it? No? Anything you want to share? Did you want to share something about the conference? Or?
There was a heavy focus on literacy. And in our breakout sessions, I was able to go to one about second grade literacy and just understanding how children learn and grasp phonics and some of the things that districts should be doing in regards to early learning, so that by second grade, the art of storytelling, even if they aren't fully reading words, is something that is natural and normal. Was what I took away from that. But there were a lot of good speakers, and that's all I got.
I'm actually going to write a report, but to echo what Ms. Gallagher just said, absolutely a very strong focus on literacy from the governor all the way down. Some good speakers. The former teacher of the year was phenomenal. They had a cute little jazz ensemble, so there was a lot of youth participation this time too, and I thought that was very significant. Again, the thing that I heard, I wrote down a few things, and I'll just share one. Reading the relevance, the kids specifically said that they want literacy, they want reading that is relevant to them, and that writing is giving them the opportunity to give their perspectives on what they have read. And so reading and writing are important. And I also learned from a couple of groups that they are bringing back cursive writing to third graders now, because that also is a part of their free expression. And I have to tell you, and I almost sent them all to you, remember Dr. Norris Price from Athens, Clarke County, who was elected Superintendent of the Year for the state. That was exciting to be there and to see her receive that recognition. She is the person who truly brought transformation, I think, in terms of our curriculum standardization across all of our schools. And so it was an excellent session. And Dr. Thomas, I'm telling you, there were a lot of superintendents there with their boards. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be, I thought about you definitely, Ms. Holt, that yes, this would have been a great opportunity for us to have some conversations with that. And I will confess that I did go by a couple of vendor booths, and I gave them Dr. Thomas's name, because I said I will not put her staff out here for you guys to start bothering.
Yes, and I would have been there had it not been cognitive.
Yeah.
So I did not feel that I was in a position to not be available for their days that they were here. That's the only reason I missed, because I wanted to participate in that. So I look forward to the one in the summer. But
Oh, that was great. Definitely, we would love to have you be a part of that, because it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And so I did say to your staff at the meeting on Saturday that I actually started getting annoyed because there were different districts there getting rewards and recognition for things that we're already doing. And I'm like, okay, so we got to start telling our story, because you're doing great things in terms of helping our kids and moving us through this pandemic. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those reports. We'll move forward with the advisory committee reports. 9-1 is the board advisory committee. As I mentioned, um, we have met. The last time we were together as a board, we identified the members that would be taking part with that board. The last time we met, we talked about some of the critical areas that we felt like the advisory board could provide feedback to the district on and to the board on. And so that is really where we are. Still, I feel like putting some structure and in place as far as like when we'll meet and, just getting feedback around that. But looking forward to that committee continuing. I think there will be a lot of different things other than just the standard things that we've, talked about for them to give feedback on. And so that's really the only update I have. Individuals that attended the meeting or is there any additional information that I'm leaving out? Yes. Thank you again, Ms. Bonas, for coordinating and helping with all of that. It's a handful of stuff and people. Okay, the Student Advisory Committee.
Yes, so that report, it's short, but it is in your documents already. They met on Monday of this week. Our students are very vocal in a good way, and they have a lot to share, and they've shared information about schools, culture, climate, graduation. There was another topic. Dr. Watley presented to them this week, and so Ms. Bonet says synthesizes that information after each meeting and gets it out to each related department so that we can be responsive to them and what they're doing. So that report is there, and actually I guess the next two are mine as well, Dr. Gant. PAB, we have received some questions and concerns about them not meeting as often as people would like. I did speak to Mr. Reed, Mr. Omar Reed, who is the president of that group this year. We spoke on Saturday at the event, and he and I will be getting together in the next couple of weeks so that we can go ahead and plan. Hopefully, I can work with him on how we can support those meetings. And then our teacher advisory board, I think, have a report in there for that as well. And Ms. Bonace and I met with them this week to go over their survey data. They conducted surveys. They've sent it out to all of the schools, have not gotten data back yet from all of the schools, but they were starting to synthesize that data. We're really excited and optimistic. And one of the members said they feel like we're kind of turning a curve in a positive way of where TAB is being received well in the schools and respected in the schools, are being respectful of their school leaders, respectful of district leaders, and working together even when there are difficulties and challenges to address those collaboratively. So they were really excited about the feedback. One of the leaders said, the feedback was actually more positive than they had anticipated. So we're excited about where we're going with that. So that's Student Advisory Board, Parent Advisory Board, and Teacher Advisory Board.
All right, thank you for those updates. Any questions for Dr. Thomas? Okay, we'll move forward to the board president's report. There are just a few things I wanted to mention. And one of them I already mentioned, and that is that was with Ms. Hull as far as the policy piece, like following back up with us around that. I do want to say thank you to you all, to my board colleagues, Dr. Thomas, the district, specifically Ms. Bones, and I know Mr. Barlaman, in helping us prepare for the Cognia visit. I don't take that lightly. I know that's a lot of uploading of materials and report writing and preparing for presentations and organizing interviews. And so I'm very appreciative of of your help and your support, and really leading particularly the administrative and operational portion of that. So thank you to Dr. Thomas as well as board colleagues. I did want to sort of run by the board. I know that, if if the community watches this meeting, then they know that we had the cognitive visit. But I do think at some point it may be important to communicate with the public. I don't know if, the board feels a press release or something to say this visit has taken place, and these are the next steps. So that if a person is not listening to these meetings and knowing exactly where to, find this conversation, they will at least be updated on where we are with the cognitive visit. And so if you all are okay with that, or if you have any thoughts around that, if you could share those at this time, if you're okay with at least some type of.
I totally like to see it.
Okay. All right. Just don't want people wondering about the accreditation, status and process. So Dr.
When
Thomas
will
is.
we hear?
It will probably, I'm guessing, be March again,
Mhm.
because we always fall right in that time where they have quarterly meetings, and once the report is completed by those who did the visit, then it has to go to the larger group, the oversight group, and they have to then review the report and vote on it, accepting it, and then it comes out to us. And that meeting is usually like right at the end of December, and then the next one is in March, and we have never been not we, but just the timeline with when our visits occur always happens so close to the holidays that they miss getting that in a time to get it back for that vote. So historically, it's been March, and that's what I'm kind of thinking is going to happen this time, unless they get it turned around really quickly, which is possible because we didn't have as many items standards that had to be addressed. So, but my guess, Ms. Linda, would be March.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that cognitive visit? Everybody's okay with at least a press release or some statement? Okay. All right. I did want to just also give you a heads up that depending on how the conversation goes tonight with policy, well, actually not depending on that, but one of the things I shared with Dr. Thomas was, as we move into the new year, looking at, I know we had talked about before possibly having a new business area for the agenda. And then also one of the things that I noted too, I think that I mentioned as well, was, the board thinking through if they want to have like a time or an item at the end for any type of like remarks from board members, like 2 or so minutes, remarks, celebrations, and things like that. I know we've had some individual conversations at different times where, people may have wanted to acknowledge a student or acknowledge something that's going on in the community. And so those are 2 things I just wanted to give you a heads up that hopefully we'll be speaking about, Dr. Thomas, myself, and Dr. Maddox at our next meeting in a little bit more detail. Wanted to mention too, with the self-assessments being done, just a reminder that those are complete. And I know Ms. Palmer, at some point, we probably need to chit chat, or Dr. Thomas and I, around how we're sure that our 2 self-assessments are available to the full board. I don't know that we had the completed self-assessment with the action items added. I know we talked about the document that the action items were being put in, but that is something that will, that hopefully will be shared within the next month. And then lastly, I wanted to mention, so that we're prepared, in January, we will be doing nominations for vice president and president, and that will take place at that first work session meeting. So I am asking you to be prepared for nominations. And then that second meeting is when we will take action, and when the changeover will happen for the new vice president and president. So please be sure you're giving some thought to that so that we are prepared in January. Those are all of my reminders. Dr. Thomas, 11-1, superintendent remarks.
Thank you. And you covered two of mine. So I was going to say thank you for Cognia. Thank all of you board members for your availability and assistance through that process, as well as the individuals that Dr. Gant already thanked. I had on here about nominations for president and vice president. So Ms. Palmer will have nomination forms available for you all to complete at that January 13th meeting. Just a quick vaccine update. Right now, we have total verified 1,979 individuals who have been verified. There are 24 people who've submitted, but we're just trying to get verified, like maybe one of their vaccines is not showing up on grids. So just some technical difficulties. So we still are almost right at 2,000 out of about 2,400 staff people. So we're really excited about that. And in your last Friday, yes, there you go. In your last Friday board update, there was information just to keep you in the loop on where we are with the early head start and facility at the place, which is Mr. Harris's location. I hate to keep calling it Old Gaines, but yes, how people know what we're talking about. So that was in your board update. Thank those of you who participated in or attended the what used to be called the Summit in the Crisis of Black Education, and this year it was renamed the Opportunity in terms of Black education. And Mr. Fred Smith was kind of the lead coordinator working with us on that, or we were working with them. It was their initiative. And we had a very good turnout, and I felt like we had some really good conversation. So I thank the community for their part in that, and Mr. Smith for organizing that. And a lot of times people want to walk out with an action item, and sometimes you have that, and sometimes it's just good to hear what other people are doing, and then that kind of helps you to think about who you need to connect with. So I think we will have both coming out of that, but we were very excited about that. And my last just was to say that we have not forgotten about West Broad. Our goal is to put forth a proposal on how to move forward with West Broad, hopefully by the middle of next year. As a district, we've spent a great deal of time and energy thinking about how to develop, redevelop, and use that property. For me, it's critical that that can not get kicked down the road and left to a new superintendent. I just don't think that's fair. So I want us to really be aggressive in addressing what we do with that property moving forward. I will be open to ideas and suggestions with the purpose of just choosing a path forward that's going to benefit our students and our families in Athens, Clarke County. Our method will be that we're going to have an intentional process about engaging multiple stakeholders, listening to priorities and concerns. We will have something over the next 9 months or so to look at that, evaluate, and brainstorm options. I hope to, well, we will meet next week, with our internal staff just to reset and look at an engagement process. And then I hope to meet with the board in February just to have a facilitated session on what are your priorities, what's important to you, what do you want to see happen, and your vision for what we do in the Clarke County School District, and particularly with that space. And then we will work with other stakeholders and assess options later in the spring. And we will be keeping you all fully apprised and stay transparent on the work. But ideally by next fall, I want to have a strong recommendation and approval so that we can start moving forward with doing something there, and that the space does not become, continue to not be used and to deteriorate even more. So that's that for me.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
Can I ask two
Yes,
questions?
Of course.
And I don't know what's going on with my chair, but I feel
You're
I
really
feel
going down.
so
You're
awkward.
So low.
I'm already a small person, and this just feels
You are so low.
like insult and injury. Anyway, so in the report you mentioned that that for the old gains to cut costs, that rather than getting a general contractor, you would sort of piecemeal the work by bidding out
So
all
Mr.
of the.
Gilbert would serve as the general contractor.
Okay, so
yes.
he'll serve as a general
Mhm.
contractor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and will that could it potentially delay anything, or do you foresee any negative consequences of not having a external sort of contractor?
I'll let him speak to that.
Okay.
We've seemingly, it should expedite some things, but
Okay.
I don't want to speak inappropriately, so I'm going to allow him to speak to that. And we have your chair.
Oh, thank you.
Your chin was almost on the table.
Yes, acting as our own general contractor, we can expedite the work. We actually have 15 bid packages out right now for quotes. So hopefully anything over 50,000, I'll bring in January to you guys and we can start. So as soon as we move out, we'll actually probably start some of the selective demolition prior to the board meeting in January. So it'll kind of speed things up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Because we would actually have to bid for a general contract
Right.
too, so that would have been another process that, yes.
Usually that adds about 3 months to anything you do between advertising, getting drawings complete, things like that. So,
Okay. And then my second question, and this might be pouring salt on a wound, so if it is, feel free to just be like, let's not talk about this right now. But with the West Broad property, there was all this conversation about turning it into sort of like a centralized community hub, right? That would have different types of resources that are sort of a vacuum in the community. And how come that conversation was abandoned? And again, if this is not a conversation we need to have, I'm fine with just
I'll
being
give
like,
you the
let's
quick
know.
version. Yes, or yes, but. So the school district funds, and that's why I really want us to have that conversation about vision and what we want to see, because with that then comes conversation within how do we fund that.
Oh.
So if we made it a community hub, a space for community groups and, you know, those who work with youth or those who work with families and those who do mental health, great. But we can't use state funds to do that if it doesn't have an expressed educational purpose for so many seat hours. And so that's one of the conversations, and that's actually been a resounding conversation that people have had, is that there is kind of a vacuum and a need for that space. So if that is something that comes out in our conversation, then the next step of that conversation, and Emily and I have been talking about that, great, now how do we pay for that? And so, you know, there are a couple of things we can't use state funds for, like a museum or really a community facility. Now, if it were a daytime learning facility and an evening time community space, that would be different. But what I'm hearing in a lot of venues is there's a need for space during the day for those kinds of activities. So if that is then what we say we prioritize, then the next part of that activity would be, okay, now how do we pay for that? Are there grants out there? Are there funds? You know, are some of you rich and you want to just do an endowment? I don't know. So like if that is our priority, then how do we cover that cost? So yes, you're right. And that then has to be part 2 of that conversation.
Gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We did that without going too far down. Yes.
Any follow-up questions or additional questions for Dr. Thomas? Comments?
No, it's something I'm just confused about. It's old business, but it's with the contractors. You know, we voted that, you know, for the contractor that was it for how many years?
Was it, you're talking about?
We voted a few years ago for the contractors for a period of 5 years. So are they in this puzzle anywhere, or as we've been talking about building Gaines School? Like,
Are you talking about the architect, or specifically the
firm,
architect?
yes. Is that still, are we still using those persons? Because it's not 5 years yet. I just want to know where are they at in the puzzle?
And since that was before me, I'm going to allow him to come back up and speak to that. He's on the way.
The architect was under contract for certain specific projects. Lindsay Pope Brayfield, they are currently working on the Cedar Shoals Fieldhouse and Clark Middle. We had engaged them on West Broad, so we still have them, you know, available for West Broad. We're doing design build pretty much at Old Gaines, where we're having the major subcontractors, plumbing, electrical, they'll have to pull their own permits. We're not adding any space. It's more of retrofitting and replacing units that are wore out, things like that.
Thank you.
We'll be bidding in January for the Splost 6 projects. I'll do an architectural RFP. I'll have a listing of projects, usually our tier 1 projects for those services, and I'll list those out and we'll do the same process again.
And one last thing with that, no, I want to talk about something. The disparity study, is that still rolling? Because I was hoping that would happen before, we would be good before we get into another group of architects.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we'll move forward to, where are
It's
we?
Mr. Schooneman's
Mr.
time for
Schooneman,
our
okay.
financial report. So
Yes.
if it's okay
Thank
with
you.
you, I'll turn it over to him.
So for the disparity study, we did pause because we wanted to investigate potential shared savings if we paired up with ACCA. So we reached out, Mike and I, Veronica, we reached out to the firm that's doing the work for them, received a quote, and it was significantly higher than the 4 others that we had obtained from the get-go. So what Veronica has done is turned around and reached back out to those 4 initial firms that provided us a quote and said, hey, we're now accepting quotes again. Early January, I don't have the exact date, but early January, that RFP closes. And in light of the chair malfunctions, I just want to make a plug for our budget amendment later, which is going to cover new chairs for all the board members. Okay, Lisa, if you'd open up the financial statements, the FY22. Oh. That first one, yes. Okay, so just to start where we are right now, these are the reports through October 31st. So it's the 4th period of the fiscal year. So we're a third of the way through the fiscal year. We'll start out with revenues. So if you would go to, I think it's the 3rd page in there, Lisa. We have received 39.9% of our budgeted revenues. And when you compare that to where we were at this time last year, we had actually received 51.9% of our budgeted revenues. And on the summary sheet, it is not in red, even though it's quite a bit less where we were, where we are now compared to where we were last year. It's solely due just to the timing of when we receive property tax receipts. And I went in and did some investigation when I kind of was doing comparing and contrasting. I was like, looks pretty significant. We actually received a $22 million tax receipt on November 1st, so that the first day of November. So if we'd received that one day earlier, these revenues would be a drastically different story. So what I'm just going to urge to y'all is just be patient, and by the end of December, we'll get a much clearer picture in terms of our revenue, especially with our property tax collections. You'd scroll down to the next one. For expenditures, we spent 27% of our budget compared to 23.4 this time last year. While that's fully understandable, we've been in session face-to-face. Our expenditures are more in line with a typical year. 27% still is underneath that blue line where we would expect to be, where we have budgeted on a monthly basis by about $1.5 million. So although it's more than where we were at last year, it's still within our anticipated budget for the fiscal year. If you go up to the second document is our, going to cover our fund balance. So as you'd imagine, with that $22 million payment coming in November instead of October, both our cash position as well as our fund balance position are below where they were at in the prior year. Once again, next month, I totally anticipate the yellow lines on both cash and fund balance to go back above the blue line. And before we move on, just in preparation for our budget amendment later on this evening, if you look at that bottom graph, if you're looking at that yellow line, it gets closest to the green line in August. And the difference there, it's 19 something percent compared to 15%. And that's actually about $8.5 million gap there. And if you recall from our budget, we plan on using $6.5 million of that, which leaves us about $2 million of fund balance, which we can utilize. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out before we get to our budget amendment later on this evening. And if you'd scroll all the way down to the last page for me, Lisa. For our cash flow projection, once again, we've got 4 months of actuals. The other remaining months are all projected. And what I've done here is I've normalized the projection for that $22 million payment. So I've kind of zeroed out our property tax collections and said, hey, we just anticipate to receive exactly what we budgeted. If that's the case, instead of our fund balance going down $6.5 million, it's actually projected to only go down about $4.5 million now. So I'll pause there if you have any questions. If not-
Al? Is it just 4.5?
There are some areas, especially I think with TABT, where we've been having really strong collections. And then on top of that, when I was talking about the expenditures, if we're budgeting per month, we're about $1.5 million below where our monthly budget would have us at. So if you add I think if you go look at the TABT up there at the top, it's kind of close to $500,000 in excess of what we anticipated to bring in at this point. Add those two together, and it's about $2 million right there. Yeah, so if you take that $2 million for the green, net that with the $6.5 million in the red, we're still $4.5 million in the red.
But that's the one I remember you saying all those times that it's gonna even out eventually.
That's right, because we added $6.5 million to the budget last year. So over the course of the 2 years, we're going to end up at the same place either way.
So is it 6 or 4? The 2 is the buffer.
So not only do we have 2 as a buffer, we've already added, just projection wise, it looks like we're going to have about $2 million additional in savings, which I didn't even calculate. I was just looking at the month of August, how far down that dip went. But yeah, if we're looking at our, where we are financially now, we'd actually have more of a buffer.
But we moved 6 for a reason. Right.
Correct.
Okay.
At least if you'd open up the supplementary reports. This first report didn't actually change from the previous month. Both the attorney's fees as well as the board member travel stayed exactly the same. If you scroll down to the second page. The second page is our significant invoices between 10 and 80 for the month of October. You're welcome to peruse those. Email me. Let me know if you have any questions on any of those. Just a heads up, after our policy change, I'm going to go and update this report to be between 10 and 50 because you guys will receive, any kind of purchase orders that exceed 50,000 now. You guys will actually see, get your hands on, and be able to vote on. And then the last report that I have this evening is the Senate Bill 68. If you just click on that, it's another supplementary report for you to peruse. It's by fund. It's got the beginning budget, any kind of transfers in and out, what's been spent, what's been received, anything that's encumbered, and your ending balance there on the right-hand column. So I'll pause there. If you have any questions, we have to answer them. If not, back to you, Dr. Thomas.
Any questions for Mr. Sheehan?
I did go to the finance workshop and you are so ahead of the curve. Thank you.
And he will be available as we get to item number 16.12 later.
Okay. Thank you. So Dr. Thomas, this is your recommendation.
Yes, ma'am, it's my recommendation that I keep forgetting we don't meet next week, so that
Yes,
the
I'm
I'm
confused
sorry.
a little bit too. So.
Yes, I wasn't thinking that. So it is my recommendation that the financial report be accepted as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Is it
I move.
okay?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Second.
I move
Okay.
that we accept the financial report.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion by Ms. Davis, a second by Ms. Hall. Any follow-up questions or discussion? All in favor of accepting the financial reports, if you would say aye and raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstaining? Okay. We will move forward to number 13, and these are our all of our policies to be posted for 4 weeks for public comment. Mr. Pruitt, if you can remind me, I'm out of brain power. Wait, no, hold on. This isn't the consent. I'm sorry. I was getting this confused with our consent agenda. Never mind. These are our policies to be posted for 4 weeks for public comment. I guess we could, if there were any particular like questions or concerns that we had about any of these, if you would share those and we can go through them. It looked like most of them were ones to be rescinded. I think with the exception of maybe 3 of them, but I'll just start at 13.1. Was there any?
So for any of these that are rescinded, I didn't see any comment from the attorney, and nor did I see a rationale for rescinding. So is that somewhere else that I didn't read?
I didn't
Are we
either.
rescinding these simply because we don't need them anymore? Or are we rescinding them because something happened?
I can go quick. I can go through it quickly, Dr. Gann, if
Okay,
that's
that
okay.
would be great.
So for the ones that we're rescinding, so JHD is the second possible. BBC is board committees. So of course that is based off of a mass. That's based on the board's discussions around limiting the board committees to the special committees, which are the ones you all serve on in the committee. It also still keeps the board's authority to create special ad hoc committees as needed. So that's BBC, that's revised. Policy JHD, which is the second one that's being rescinded, is around student school events, social events. That is a policy from 1994 or from 1987 that limits the amount of events that elementary schools can hold. We felt that that policy was not needed. The committee, that schools should not be limited in the amount of events that they should be able to hold. Policy JLB and JN, one from 1994, one from 1983. These are both duplications. Policy JLB, which is the first I stated, appears in policy DFK and DFK R1. Policy JN is a duplication. It exists in policy KHA. And both of those policies the board did review and approve earlier this year. Policy JP, I believe is the next one, 13.5, is a policy from 2002. That is now captured by the professional ethics with the Georgia Professional Standards Commission, we do not allow staff-student relationships, and we do not endorse staff-student relationships. So that is captured by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. And then the last that's being rescinded is JQE for pregnant students, because we do not just create a special policy for students because we serve all students. So we did not feel that a policy should say that we serve pregnant students in a special way, because they are all of our students are our students. And then policy BBA, which is 13.7, is review only. That was your board officer policy. And then the last policy was BDC, which is almost a complete rewrite based off of the elimination of the policy committee, which now brings policy adoption and review internal with staff, which will then be recommended to the board for review and input. And I'm happy to cover any of those that I went too quickly through. Sorry, friends.
So even in covering them, it would be good if we had a history on these when we rescind them. So we don't have the attorney's comments, but could we have a rationale or something added to them so that, again, for posterity, we know why we made the decision?
We can add that. And I believe we have the attorney's report, so we may have not just attached it but we could add that in.
That would be great, thank you. And if he commented on it, then that's fine, that, I would want to see that in here.
Are there any questions for Mr. Harris? Dr. Harris, I'm sorry. Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I won't go into details, but, you know, I cannot support, taking BBC out for public comment. So, mainly because, excuse me, mainly because if you look at the Government and Community Relations Committee, it talks about specific actions that this board will take, to engage the community. And once you eliminate the policy, those go away as well. And these are very specific things that this board voted to commit themselves to do. And if there's some other way that we can pull those items out into a separate policy or whatever, I'm fine with that discussion. But as is, I cannot see the most specific engagement that this board has ever committed itself to. We're now going to remove it. And so I can support the others going out for public comment, but not 13.1.
And I had stepped, I'm sorry, Dr. Gann had stepped away, Dr. Harris, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Used to that. We had initially discussed suspending the rules, if you recall, Dr. Gann, for voting on that one and not going out for public comment, so that we could move forward. Is that right? We're turning through it. So there had been an initial discussion that we would suspend the rules, vote on, and that was why Ms. Palmer moved that up to the first one, because some of the other policy actions are actually dependent upon that one being approved. Did I say that right? Okay, thank you.
You're referencing BBC, though, right? Or you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
10.1.
And so, yeah,
Which one was he talking about? I'm sorry.
He was talking about 13.8,
Okay, got it.
right? He's talking about 13.1.
13.1, board committees eliminates board committees. And that's the one I cannot support.
Okay, so we can make a motion for 13.2 through 13.8.
and if we may, if I may suggest, I know that these are all grouped together. For me, I know I hear Mr. Davis saying that 13.1, he didn't say specifically he wanted to vote on that one separately, but he
Right.
couldn't support it. For me, 13.5, I think needs a little, I'm a little bit hesitant as far as like just totally removing that policy right now. I do hear that it's captured in the, in our professional standards, but I know that this is going out for public comment as well. So, yeah. Okay. So disregard what I said. Yeah, it's going for public comment. So never mind.
Well, just for context, that was also, some of that is also captured in our HR policy, our personnel policies.
Okay.
So it's in different places, not just the professional.
Okay.
standards,
Okay.
but in some other
Maybe I need.
policies.
I'll be sure to try to go back and take a look and may reach out to you or Dr. Yeager over the next 4 weeks while it's out. So,
I have a question.
Ms.
So when we
Davis.
send these out for public comment, is the assumption that the board has vetted them and we have already made our comments, or do we then get a chance to review again when they come back with or without comments, or what's this new action given that we don't have a committee?
That we don't have a committee. That's a good question, Ms. Davis. As far as like when these come back, because we'll be in January, I think part of it is going to depend on how 13.1 falls. And if in fact 13.1 is voted, if we vote in favor or majority vote in favor of that, my guess would then be that this would come back before the full board. pretty much like it would normally do. If it went out for public comment, it still would be back at the full board for that regular meeting, for the full board to then say, vote up or down. So I don't think that process would change too much for this group of policies at least.
In the past, it has gone that if you went to public comment, came back, and we pretty much said it's done. Everybody said their say so, and I just want to know, since we don't have a committee that has had time to really vet this anymore, are we going to continue that pathway? So thank you. And so I'm using Assembly, and so 13.1 for me is policy JHT. Are you guys seeing board something else?
We are seeing BBC.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to open the floor for a motion of some sorts related to this conversation.
So moved.
What's the motion? I miss Hull.
So,
What's the Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to move 13.2 through 13.6 out for public comment by Dr. Dykeman.
second.
Ms. Hull. Okay. Any specific questions about that motion? More discussion, Ms. Davis?
She was.
Okay. Additional questions? All right, all in favor of moving the policies listed in 13.2 through 13.6 out for public comment? That is policy JHD, JLB, JN, JP, and JQE. If you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign. And any abstaining? Okay, so policies items number 13.2 through 13.6 have been moved for public comment. The floor is open for additional motions for the remaining policies.
Move that we send policy 13.1, policy BBC, board committees out for public comment.
Okay, which one was that one? You said policy.
13.1.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to send policy BBC, board committees out for public comment. Okay, okay. We have a second by Dr. Dykeman. Any follow-up questions or concerns? Okay, all in favor of moving board committees, policy BBC out for public comment, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstaining? Okay. Ms. Palmer, did you get those? Okay. Okay, we will move forward to, actually, we still have 13.7 and 13.8.
So I move that we send policy 13.7, policy BBA, and 13.8, policy BDC out for public comment.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Ms. Davis. Any follow-up questions, specific questions around that motion? Concerns? Ms. Davis?
So in terms of questions, I think that they are related to policy BBC, and somehow if we can make a relationship there, so that when we look at them, we're looking at these three as a whole. that would be helpful for further discussion. And then the, obviously that piece that's not a part of the legal process in terms of how do we function absent committees is not something that we've had a conversation about. I've heard we just bring it to the full board. And if that is the way we operate, then yes, I think we might need to have a little bit more structure around that for people who need more structure.
So I would, if the board hasn't already looked at Mr. or Dr. Harris did an excellent job of lining out or revising policy BDC. It provides so much structure and so much detail in terms of how policies are drafted, vetted, sent out, and a lot of the work is done before it comes to the board. So, I mean, there's definitely room for questions and discussions, and if you want to tweak it, but it was a very extensive policy that gave so much detail. And I would just encourage y'all to take a moment to review it if you haven't already.
And having done that, there's still that discussion, right? Because the words say something and we interpret them differently based on where we're coming from. But again, just trying to keep the end goal in mind as we go through these very critical. So thank you. I thought that was a but it should not be taken separately. Signal the change in how we do business.
Yeah, I don't really, I mean, I guess these are with policy BBA, to consider this in light of, the other policies that we're looking at. But to me, I don't think these things have implications for, I don't think policy BBA is at least related to like the functioning of committees other than, I know in the role of president, that whoever sits in that role might be able to identify, create the ad hoc committees. But I will say just before we take action, because I do know I think we have a motion and a second on the floor. It's very, very rare that I vote against putting anything out for public comment unless I feel that there's been like a process issue or if it's some other type of sort of urgent issue or issue that has not been able to be resolved. And I sort of see committees as such. And so that sort of gives some light to it, at least why I didn't think it should be voted or put out for public comment, because I do think that the board has determined that, not by action, but we have discussed wanting to move forward without having committees. And so I at least wanted to shed some light on why we'll also be voting against policy BDC being put out for public comment. I think technically policy BDC as well as BBC, would have probably been best initiated at the start of the year, meaning that we don't have 4 weeks. Because once we put this out for 4 weeks, it's going to circle back around, meaning that it's going to be on our January agenda, and then we're not going to take action until that board meeting, the next board meeting. So, and that's fine, but I just wanted to give some context for at least why I wouldn't be supporting this being put out for public comment. Not because I don't support it. I'd actually think it's a very thorough job, but I do think it's a little bit prudent for us to have some, a clear at least direction as far as committees when we attend our first meeting. So, but we do have a motion on the floor for 13.7 BBA and 13.8 policy BDC to be put out for public comment. And so if there are no additional questions or concerns, we'll take action on that motion. All in favor of 13.7?
I do have one question before you call the vote.
Oh, okay.
So you're saying that you don't support it going out for public comment because you'd rather just vote on it tonight?
Yes, but I don't necessarily think I'm in the place as presiding over the meeting to offer a motion that we would have suspended the rules. I do think Dr. Thomas mentioned that at the beginning of this conversation, that conversation.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I just wanted to give some context as far as where I am more so for the record, I don't want it to appear that I don't want the public's input, but with committees, I think it's something that we've been talking about for about a year and a half, 2 years now.
So could I make a substitute motion? Could I knock her motion down? Could I ask her to pull her motion off the floor?
Because I would.
Could I ask the motion to be suspended?
You can, you can do a substitute motion, but I don't know about Mr. Fruit.
She made the motion.
What you want to do?
But, if the intent is to, then, I guess then you want to make such a motion that we suspend the rules one of the times, suspend it, I think it'd be better.
So the risk is that we don't have, that there isn't a secret.
Yeah, and we've already taken action. We have already taken action for BBC to be put out for public comment, and that motion, and that motion passed. Yeah.
I guess you could reverse that motion too.
So we're back at 13.7 and 13.8. We do have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. And Dr. Anderson, I hope that did answer your question. Yeah, you
Can
can
I
do it.
move to reverse a motion? I mean, can I move to reverse a vote that has already passed? Can I move to rescind an action taken?
Yes, and in that event, Mr. Pruitt, please help me, but it would need a second, and then we would take action on that motion.
I would like to make the motion that we rescind our vote for 13.1 policy BBC board committees.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Anderson and then a second by Ms. Hull. Follow-up questions to that motion to rescind the action taken on policy BBC. Ms. Davis.
Question would be, in rescinding, can we dispose of policy BBC, not simply saying that we want to also take action to vote on this at the same time? Or does it have to be a separate motion?
So you're saying after Dr. Anderson's motion is voted on, then do we?
Can her motion be amended to rescind and vote now, as opposed to making two different votes out? Can that, has to be two? Thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the table. We have a second. Ms. Davis has had her question answered. Are there any follow-up questions or concerns about the motion to rescind the action that the board took on item 13.1?
No, thank you. Your insight was very helpful in understanding what happened. I didn't get it until Dr. Anderson fleshed it out some more, so thank you for that.
Sure. Any additional? Okay, all in favor of rescinding the action taken, which was to put policy BBC out for public comment for 4 weeks. If you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the same sign. Any abstaining? Ms. Palmer, did you get the opposed? Okay. And so, Mr. Pruitt, help me so that motion passed to be rescinded. Right, okay.
I would like to move that we suspend the rules for 13.1, 13.7, and 13.8 policies, BBC board committees, BBA board officers, and BDC policy adoption.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to suspend the rules by Dr. Anderson, a second by Ms. Hall. Follow-up questions and discussion about the motion to suspend rules for those 3 policies. Okay, all in favor of suspending the rules for those three policies, if you would, raise your hands and say aye. Aye. All opposed, the same sign. Okay, and then any abstaining? Okay, so Ms. Palmer, I think we had two. Okay. Okay, all right. So it passes and now we need to still take action on those three. Okay, all right. Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Pruitt. Okay, so the floor is open for a motion for policies 13.1, 13.7, and 13.8.
So I move that we, I move that we approve the policy 13.1, 13.7, and 13.8.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Hall,
Second.
a second by Dr. Anderson. Okay. Follow-up questions, concerns, or discussion? Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I'm just, my only concern is that we have planned two events that we wanted the Government and Community Relations Committee to plan in January, but as of this vote, we won't have that committee. So I'll just point that out.
But we, as a committee, we recommended that the full board participate with getting feedback with their commissioners and then taking that information to the January meeting. So it seems to me like there was already sort of this natural shift for that work to now move to the full board. Additionally, with the synthesis of the information that we've done, Dr. Dykeman has already offered to do that and then bring that back to the full board. So it seems to me like there was kind of already that natural transition to that work coming over this way anyway. And then we can just continue with these meetings and plan them as a full board. The meetings can still take place. It's not like the meetings are going away. They can still be on the calendar, and the president can still charge the group on how to move forward with planning and executing those meetings, as will be the new policy if it passes.
And with the
Can you speak up a little bit, Karina? Your mic.
And I was saying with the addition of the communication spots going on the agenda for new business and just updates, I think there's an opportunity to have more conversation than we have, at least since I've been on board.
Okay. Other questions and concerns about the motion we have on the
To
table?
make sure that we enumerate 13.1 is policy BBC, 13.7 is policy BBA, and 13.8 is policy BDC, just in case we go from assembly to board docs and lose that number.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Davis. Any additional follow-up? Can you speak up a little bit so people can hear who are watching?
Just to make sure that everybody understands why we decided to suspend the rules for these was because we want to be able to start the new year with these policies in place. And normally they would require a 4-week public comment.
Thank you for providing that context. Additional comments? All right. Okay. We have a motion on the table to adopt policy BBC and policy BBA and policy BDC. All in favor of adopting those policies, if you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. All opposed, if you would raise your hands and say aye as well. Okay. And any abstaining, the same signs. Okay. Ms. Palmer, did you? Okay. All right. So that motion carries. Those three policies have been adopted. We'll move forward to item 14. These are our policies to be adopted, rescinded, or reviewed. The floor is open.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. So we have a motion by Ms. Hall, a second by Ms. Gallagher. Follow-up questions and concerns about those policies? Any follow-up discussion?
There was no public comment. I realize Dr. Yeager normally says that.
Okay, so no public, no additional comments. Okay, all in favor of taking action, the listed action on policy BCBH. These are our board meeting minutes, and which was a revision, and then a review for policy 14, A, B, C, D, A. If you would raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the same sign. And any abstaining? I don't think I heard any. Did I hear any abstention? Okay. All right, we'll move forward to item 15. These are our personnel recommendations, 15.1 and 15.2. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Candace, my recommendation that the board personnel report and personnel addendum be accepted and voted on as presented.
Okay, thank you. Floor is open. Okay, Ms. Gallagher made a motion. Is there a second? Okay, Dr. Anderson, the floor is open for any follow-up questions, clarifications. Ms. Davis?
Yes, I haven't been able to open the report of the personnel until I got here. So I am just reviewing this. It's going to take me a minute. Is there a reason that we weren't able to open this? I wasn't able to open this at my home.
Are you looking at it through board docs or through Assembly?
I'm in Assembly now.
You could see it in board docs if
It didn't open for me in board docs for the last two, 3 days.
Maybe, were you logged in?
Yes,
You were logged in?
it just wouldn't open. So it could be my spotty internet then, if that's what you're telling me. Okay. Spectrum 2G, no good.
All right, we have where did we leave off? We have a motion and, okay, sorry. It's getting late. My processing speed is declining. Any other follow-up questions?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Do any of these personnel recommendations indicate an increase in personnel? Are there any new positions being filled on here? I can't hear.
She said she did not
She
believe
doesn't
so.
think so. I would have to go through them one by one.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions? Okay. All in favor of approving the personnel recommendations in 15.1 and 15.2, if you would say aye and raise your hands. Aye. Any opposed, the same signs. And any abstaining. Okay, we'll move forward to our action items. This is number 16. And we have several things on here. It doesn't say, of course, consent agenda, but there are a lot of different things that would normally be on there. But we can just go through. I'm just going to open the floor for a motion with these because I know there may be some questions about specific ones. And Dr. Thomas, if there are any updates that you can provide for any of these or need to provide, feel free to do
Yes.
so.
The only one that I anticipate, maybe, I know we received an email from Dr. Dykeman about 16.7. Ms. Palmer already made that change on that one. Ms. Gallagher had questions around 16.9, and she and Mr. Gaskins did talk about that. There may be other questions. And then we had referenced 1612 about the amended budget, and Mr. Schooneman is available if there are questions on that.
I did have a quick question with 1612 with the different amendments, and it was more of a general question, and maybe better suited to talk about when we do the strategic updates. I'm trying to figure out where might it neatly fit. I mean, I guess under achievement and those outcome measures, but with the professional development schools like that partnership.
The PDS, yes, ma'am.
Yes. What are we anticipating as the impact? I know that that's been here for a while.
And it's been scaled back significantly for that reason, because we did have professors and residents in almost every school, so that has been a reduction. But yes, so that is something we can be prepared to talk about, or we can get some information out to you all even before then in a update, or we can just do a quick overview at the next meeting.
And that's more so up to the board. I guess I'm just sort of tossing it out there as we think about outcomes and things like that. And I know we'll be discussing the budget soon. Actually, that time will be here before we know it. And that put by our strategic plan and our, actions that will be taken. I'm just very curious as far as like,
what's the value add?
And what is the value add? And I know that them like that specifically is not, I don't remember that being one of our like indicators or things like that.
And we
so I
have
am just
been
curious.
meeting with the University of Georgia with Dean Spangler, and we put the PDS initiatives on hold this year, more globally, partially for that reason, because we felt like for about 10 or 11 years, we had been actively engaged in that partnership, but had not made some of the shifts and changes. And that was something we mutually agreed on, and really trying to determine what is our focus of that partnership and what is the work. Because when we began it, it was a professor in residence, school-wide enrichment. There were some key targets and goals. And as time goes, needs change and people change. And so I think the rumor got out that we were abandoning the partnership with UGA this year, and that was not true. We still meet every other month. Okay. The dual language are the only current, he was saying, professors and residents is continuing the dual language right now.
I see.
Because we did meet with them to say, let's just determine what is our focus and what is it we want to accomplish through this partnership, where it's mutually beneficial for UGA as well as for CCSD, and what is going to be our priority. So we are having those conversations with them and working towards that. Do we want to just focus on literacy? Do we want to just focus on math? What does that look like for other departments? Because it's been us and the Department of Ed, or the College of Education, I'm sorry, but then there's work with the School of Social Work. There may be work with public health. So what does that look like more globally? And then what does that look like with the College of Ed?
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I was just curious about that.
And so where would that be expressed? Is that going to show up in one of our strategic priorities or an initiative, or in terms of expected outcomes from this?
As what I was saying when Dr. Gant asked, we can put that in one of our reports. It is an activity of the district, but it may not be one of the key initiatives that we have. So it might not just come out in one of our strategic priority presentations, but it's something that we can easily, because PD, the professional development school model or system model, is something that we have always given updates on
Right.
throughout. So that's just something that can be under one of my reports in an upcoming meeting.
I'm looking for points for GSBA model district. I'm sorry.
Yes, and I've written it down, so we can do that.
Yeah. And that's more so if the board is open to that. I think just to know that you all are having the conversations is fine.
We
for
are
me,
meeting,
so-
yes, for that. And UGA recognized that as well, so.
Needs to be with development,
Yeah, definitely.
whatever they do.
Yeah, and I think that's the concern where the question came from, like being sure, like, yeah, what is it for our
Mhm.
students? Like, what are the benefits and what are
Yes,
those
that was one of our
objectives? So-
questions too.
I move that we approve all action items as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Davis and a second by Ms. Hull. Any follow-up questions? Okay, all in favor of approving items 16.1 through 16.12, if you would raise your hands and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. And any abstaining? All right, so that motion passes. And then we will move forward to 17.1, which is adjournment.
So move.
Ms. Gallagher made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Ms. Hull made a second. Seeing that there are no objections, we are adjourned at 9:50 p.m.